Chapter 176. The last time. Nora raised her brows again. She had long forgotten that she had once operated on Mrs. Hunt. Tina frowned immediately at her reaction and said, "You can't really be that greedy, can you? It's said that different people gain different insights and experiences when watching anti-perform surgery. You should give more people such opportunities instead, Ms. Smith." As she spoke, she caught sight of Director Shaw's assistant approaching out of the corner of her eye. She immediately changed her attitude, switching from her earlier loftiness to her usual gentle demeanor. She sighed and said, "Of course, I'm not fighting for opportunities for myself, I'm already authorized to enter the operating room. I just feel that Ms. Smith shouldn't trouble Director Shaw over matters like this. We were allowed to enter the operating room only after going through a rigorous selection process. If someone uses connections to get in, then it means that someone else who deserves the opportunity won't be able to enter." Sure enough, her words resonated with the person approaching. Not everyone could enter the operating room. An additional person going in meant one fewer person from the school could enter. Moreover, observing and learning up close was completely different from merely watching recorded videos. The assistant was a doctoral student. After graduation, he would remain on campus as a professor and also serve as a specially invited chief doctor at the hospital. He was Director Shaw's most prized protégé. His name was Michael Lang. Suppressing his disdain, he spoke with visible displeasure. "Director Shaw asked me to bring you in." Tina frowned. Just whose connections had Nora used to make Director Shaw treat her so politely? Not only that, but he had even sent his most capable assistant to personally escort her. The Andersons definitely didn't have that kind of influence. In that case, could it be the Hunts? Tina lowered her head and followed behind them. When Nora entered the conference room, Director Shaw was in the middle of consulting with several experts. Doctors at Tina's level could only sit in the furthest rows and listen in. However, the moment Nora entered, Director Shaw stood up and said, "You're here, Ms. Smith." As he spoke, he moved to give up his seat to her. Nora waved her hand. "It's fine." She casually pulled over a chair, sat behind them, and said, "Go on. Don't mind me." Director Shaw knew her temperament well. The big boss disliked trouble and might leave early, so he didn't dare say more and continued the discussion. Seated at the back, Tina glanced at the postgraduate students standing behind the chairs and curled her lips in disdain. True chief physicians sat at the front and actively participated in the discussion. Postgraduate students who came to observe usually sat behind their mentors. When there weren't enough seats, they even had to stand. Among everyone present, only Michael was qualified to sit at the front. She had thought Nora must be extraordinary, but it turned out she was just here to listen like everyone else. The corners of Tina's lips curled into a smile. 2 hours later. This is a bleeding point. We must be especially careful to avoid it during the operation. After thoroughly discussing all possibilities, Director Shaw and the others finalized the surgical plan. Director Shaw was a democratic and magnanimous man. Whenever he had surgery scheduled, he would gather his doctoral and postgraduate students to discuss it together. Thus, he asked, "Does anyone have additional opinions? Or anything else we should pay special attention to?" With multiple mentor-level doctors having jointly discussed the case, all details had already been addressed, and everyone shook their heads. Director Shaw then looked at Nora. "Is there anything special we should take note of?" Nora raised her droopy, slightly world-weary almond-shaped eyes and said lazily, "No. This was merely a minor operation." Director Shaw had already considered every possible scenario. She had listened very carefully throughout the discussion. Now that she relaxed, she couldn't help yawning. She looked lazy and sloppy, as though she had been on the verge of falling asleep the entire time. Tina glanced at Michael and sighed. Some people would kill just for the chance to listen in, yet others don't know how to cherish the opportunity they're given. What a waste of a spot. Michael, who was always serious, glanced around the room. Every student present was extremely focused. Everyone held pens and notebooks, jotting down notes. Some even brought recording pens, afraid they might miss important points. Even Director Shaw and the other chief physicians were taking notes. Only Nora sat there casually. Michael thought of his roommate, who hadn't been selected to participate in Anti's surgery due to limited slots. Before he left, that roommate had said enviously, "You're incredibly lucky. I'd do anything just to observe Anti's surgery once." Anti was the idol of all neurosurgeons. Opportunities like this were unimaginably rare, yet that woman didn't appreciate it at all. As he was thinking, Director Shaw said, "Michael, go to my office and bring the list of personnel participating in the operation the day after tomorrow." Michael nodded. Director Shaw's office was next door, and the list required his signature for final approval. While returning, Michael casually glanced at the names. At the very top was Anti. In the past, that name existed only in legends. Now he finally had the chance to see her in person. Just seeing her name made him excited. Next was Director Shaw. Below that was the list of assistants. As he scanned through the entire list, his eyes suddenly widened. Nora's name wasn't on it. His steps immediately became light and springy. He knew it, Director Shaw wasn't someone who acted based on connections. Back in the conference room, Director Shaw announced the list and signed it. He dismissed everyone afterward, then turned to Nora. "Please wait for me a moment, Ms. Smith. I have an important phone consultation that will take about 10 minutes. I need to speak with you afterward." Nora yawned again and nodded. Director Shaw added, "Michael, take Ms. Smith to my office first." Michael nodded and led Nora out of the conference room. Tina was delighted when she heard the finalized list. She hadn't expected Nora's name to be absent. It seemed the connections she relied on weren't powerful enough after all. Was Nora furious right now? Or perhaps humiliated and embarrassed? Tina badly wanted to see her expression. So she deliberately lingered in the restroom. When she saw Michael escorting Nora out, she walked over and deliberately pretended to bump into them. She said pretentiously, "You won't be able to observe Anti's operation this time, Dr. Smith. Don't be too disappointed. There will always be another chance next time, right? Nora." She looked at Tina lazily. "Are you extremely bored today?" Tina lowered her gaze and said softly, "How could you say that? I was just trying to comfort you out of kindness. I know you must be in a terrible mood since you can't participate in Anti's operation, but that can't be helped." Before she could finish, Nora cut her off. "Who said I'm not participating?" Chapter 177. Both Tina and Michael were stunned the moment she said that. Tina stared at her incredulously. "Are you seriously planning to take part in it when you aren't even on the list? How the hell are you going to do that?" She glanced in the direction Nora was heading, it was Director Shaw's office, and said, "Are you planning to pester Director Shaw again? Do you?" When she noticed Michael still beside Nora, she swallowed the words, "Have any shame or not?" Tina balled her fists tightly and rephrased, "You're putting Director Shaw in an impossible spot if you do that. Everyone already knows the list of participants, Ms. Smith. Except for Anti, no one has the authority to change it. Director Shaw is a man of principles and well-respected. If he bends the rules for you, I'm afraid his reputation will be ruined in his twilight years." She glanced at Michael after speaking. Sure enough, he was frowning. Then she heaved a sigh and said, "I know it's useless no matter what I say, but I just want everyone to be okay. It's better not to be so insistent on some things, Ms. Smith. I'll go first." She turned and left. But before she even reached the corner, she heard Michael's cold, stiff voice. "There is no shortage of doctors who want to participate in Anti's operation, Ms. Smith. What one should rely on is ability, not connections." Tina lowered her gaze and left, satisfied. Michael was Director Shaw's most prized student. Moreover, they were related in another way. Director Shaw had already decided on Michael as his son-in-law. He had a huge say in the school and over Shaw himself. Tina's words might not have worked, but Michael's surely would. So, Nora wanted to take part in Anti's operation this time? No way. This time, it would be her turn to envy someone, no matter what. Tina left with a confident smirk. Michael's gaze remained fixed on Nora. He had always admired every decision his mentor made, because Director Shaw was a true doctor. Doctors should be benevolent. Director Shaw embodied that completely. Many people had given up on the child because his condition was extremely difficult, and too many uncertainties existed. After all, he was still in his growth phase. Yet, Director Shaw had taken on the case, even willing to stake his spotless reputation on it. After all, if the operation failed, it would break his record of never failing a single surgery in his life. Michael entered Director Shaw's office immediately after speaking. Nora followed leisurely. She sat on the sofa, looking around casually. Michael poured her a glass of water, then sat across from her. "I know you have powerful connections, Ms. Smith. That's why Mr. Shaw treats you with respect. However, I strongly advise you to give up on joining the operation." He continued in a persuasive tone, "Many people will be watching this operation. On top of that, reporters will be present. This operation is critical." The list of participants went through multiple layers of screening. If anyone tampers with it, Mr. Shaw would be personally responsible. Michael glanced at Nora's clean hands and refreshed appearance. She seemed completely untouched by rigor or seriousness. He frowned and continued, "Also, everyone in the operating room must thoroughly memorize the finalized surgical plan. But you were sleeping during the meeting just now. You didn't take notes at all, did you? What can a flippant person like you possibly learn even if you enter the operating room?" A surprised Nora retorted, "Who says I didn't commit it to memory?" Michael's anger grew at her rebuttal. "You look like you're probably a year or two younger than me, Ms. Smith. You should know better than anyone that a good memory is no substitute for a worn-out pen. At the very least, you should bring a notebook and write down all key information. That's the only way to make sure you don't forget anything important. But what did you do? You were nodding off the entire meeting." "Nora." She stared at Michael's notebook, packed densely with his notes. Then she held her forehead and said, "How could I possibly not memorize this information?" Not only did she have a photographic memory, but performing operations was almost already muscle memory for her. How could she go wrong? Michael was momentarily speechless at her rhetorical question. Nevertheless, his expression darkened. "One shouldn't be so conceited, Miss Smith. How could anyone possibly remember all these surgical key points? It was impossible unless they were someone like Director Shaw, who had countless operations and extensive experience." Nora, puzzled, asked, "Was I being conceited?" Her words made Michael choke. The young woman in front of him was practically incorrigible. He yelled, "Having you in Anti's operation is an insult to Anti. Anti is an almighty surgeon, never having failed an operation in their life. They are a legend in medicine. Can you at least hold a little awe or reverence when observing their operation?" Nora could tell from his words that he was a diehard fan of Anti. But, a legend? An almighty surgeon? That was a little too exaggerated. Even though she was thick-skinned, the corners of her lips spasmed at his words. "They aren't that godly, are they?" Her casual reply made Michael misunderstand further. "What do you mean, Miss Smith? How dare you not take Anti seriously? Are you saying Anti isn't amazing? Are you looking down on Anti, or on medical practice itself?" Nora! Did he really have to turn it into an ideological debate? Besides, how was she equivalent to the entire field of medicine? Nora facepalmed. People were treating her as more important than she actually was, which vaguely stressed her out. Though she found it funny, she explained seriously, "Anti is human too. They aren't a god. She just needed more sleep than ordinary people. That was all." Anti was completely beyond Michael's reach, her idol. He would never tolerate anyone disrespecting her. Seeing Nora belittle the genius surgeon infuriated him. He stood abruptly. "You!" Before he could finish, the office door swung open. Director Shaw hurried in. He had cut his 10-minute consultation short to 5 minutes to avoid slighting the big boss. Yet he walked in to see Michael glaring at Nora. A startled Director Shaw asked, "What's going on, Michael?" A huffy Michael snapped, I don't understand who the hell is backing her, Director Shaw. She's just a little girl. Why are you so polite to her? Director Shaw. He immediately stopped Michael. Stepping forward, he rebuked, "What nonsense are you talking? She doesn't have anyone backing her." Michael was even more bewildered. Then are you really going to let her participate in Anti's operation? Of course. Michael's fury boiled over. Why are you letting her participate in Anti's operation when she clearly despises Anti so much? Director Shaw rubbed his forehead, then asked, "Do you even know who she is?" Chapter 178. Michael frowned. Who could she possibly be? Wasn't she just the daughter of a wealthy family with a bit of influence? But if that were really the case, his mentor wouldn't be speaking so solemnly. Michael looked at Nora, then back at Director Shaw, who asked him, "Who is the person you admire the most?" Of course, it was. In an instant, something clicked in Michael's head. He whipped his head around abruptly and stared at Nora in disbelief. His eyes widened, round and bulging, and he swallowed hard. Are you Anti? Director Shaw felt that his student was finally being smart for once. Michael was too academically focused and had a rather rigid personality. He devoted all his passion and energy to medicine. Director Shaw could protect him while he was still around, but he couldn't help worrying whether Michael would be able to make a name for himself in the medical field after he retired. From the looks of it, he didn't seem that stupid after all. Or so he thought, because the next moment, he heard Michael say, "Anti's first assistant, Lily." Director Shaw. He immediately took back his earlier thought. On the sofa, Nora, who had been about to wait for Michael to worship her, also froze. An astonished Michael exclaimed, "Are you really Lily? My goodness! I've only heard that Anti's first assistant was a young lady, but I didn't expect her to be this young. If you're Lily, then you're truly impressive, Miss Smith." The corners of Nora's lips twitched. Director Shaw facepalmed. Michael adjusted his glasses, looked at her seriously, and said, "I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance, Ms. Lily. You are so blessed to be able to work with Anti. Do you know that every medical student envies you the most?" Seeing that Michael looked like he was about to continue, Director Shaw waved his hand to interrupt him. He decided to do him a favor and let his protégé experience just how disgusting and detestable society could be, while also teaching him not to judge a book by its cover. "She's not Lily. All right, you can go out now." Michael? She wasn't Lily? He had thought that Anti was too busy to come personally, so she had sent Lily to participate in the consultation instead. But if she wasn't Lily, then why had his mentor said that? Michael frowned in confusion. Still, he obediently glanced at Nora once more before leaving the room. After he left, Director Shaw closed the door and looked at Nora helplessly. "This student of mine has extremely strong comprehension abilities in neurosurgery. You could call him a genius. He'll definitely become an even better surgeon than me in the future. It's just that he's a bit thick-headed. I hope you won't hold it against him." Nora waved her hand carelessly, clearly not bothered in the slightest. Director Shaw finally felt relieved. Anti's status in the medical field was simply too high. A single word from her could easily ruin Michael's future. He took out the personnel list, handed it to Nora, and said, "This is the list of all the medical staff participating in the operation. Do you think it needs to be reduced?" Although he had already signed off on it, he still needed her personal confirmation. Nora skimmed through it. Her gaze paused briefly on Tina's name before moving on. Not only had Tina dared to boost the live stream's popularity behind the scenes, but Henry's sudden arrival in New York to stir up trouble had clearly been instigated through Angela. And Tina was the only one who could have egged Angela on. That woman was truly irritating. Nora wanted her gone from her life. If that was the case, then she would naturally have to give Tina a legitimate reason and opportunity to disappear. She smiled faintly and left Tina's name untouched. In the end, she only added one more name, Lisa Black. Her little cousin. Oh, come to think of it, since she wasn't actually related to Henry, then she and Irene Smith weren't aunt and niece either. Still, Aunt Irene had always treated her well. Blood relations or not, Nora didn't mind maintaining that familial bond. Director Shaw smiled when he saw the final list. "You're surprisingly protective of your student." Nora yawned and stood up. "She's my student. Of course I have to protect her." Performing surgeries was exhausting. If she groomed and trained Lisa properly, it would be ideal if Lisa could operate on her behalf in the future. If it weren't for her health issues, she would have liked to save even more people. Director Shaw hurriedly added, "Since you didn't bring your assistant this time, I've arranged one for you." He smiled meaningfully. "What do you think of Michael?" Nora glanced at him. Director Shaw chuckled. "I'm not trying to promote my student. But in terms of overall ability, he's the most suitable candidate. And his admiration for Anti is limitless, he definitely won't hold you back." Nora thought of the notes Michael had taken earlier. They were densely written and meticulously organized. At a glance, it was obvious that he was the stiff, rigid type, perfectly suited to be a doctor. She nodded. "I'll leave the decision to you." With that, she turned and walked out of the office. Unexpectedly, Michael was standing right outside the door. When he saw her, he hesitated before asking, "Who exactly are you, Miss Smith?" The corners of Nora's lips curved into a faint smile. "Make a guess." Then she left without giving him another chance to speak. She went downstairs toward the parking lot. Along the way, students were pouring out of classrooms, filling the corridor with movement and chatter. Her phone rang. When she answered, Cherry's voice came through. "Mommy, can you help me find someone?" Nora raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Cherry sounded dejected. "It's my sponsor Grandpa. He hasn't been on Messenger for 36 hours and 7 minutes. Can you find out who he is for me? And if possible, tell him to log in. Our friendship spark is about to die out." Nora. She was aware of what went on during Cherry's live streams. Sponsor Grandpa and Sponsor Daddy were both die-hard fans. Still, she didn't feel like dealing with it. "I'm sleepy. I need to sleep. I already asked Pete, Mommy. You're not in bed right now. If you don't help me, I'll ask Grandaunt instead." Nora. This kid really knew how to threaten her. Her aunt was extremely busy overseas. Despite that, she had helped take care of Cherry all these years. Nora really didn't want to bother her with such trivial nonsense. Sighing, Nora said, "Fine. Just this once. I know. It won't happen again." Cherry hung up happily. Holding her phone, Nora was about to check the Messenger account Cherry had sent when a male student suddenly brushed past her. He appeared to bump into her shoulder accidentally and apologized, "Sorry." Just as he tried to slip away, a slender hand grabbed his arm. The young man struggled, trying to break free, but found it impossible. The girl looked petite, yet her grip was terrifyingly strong. Nora lowered her gaze to the 2 strands of hair he had plucked from her head amid the chaos. A sharp glint flashed through her cat-like eyes as she demanded coldly, "Who ordered you to take my DNA sample? Could it be her biological father?" Chapter 179. There was actually another reason why Nora had deliberately revealed during Roxanne's live stream that she wasn't Henry's daughter, and that was because the man who had once shared an intimate relationship with her mother would surely become suspicious. With the existence of a daughter like her, he would inevitably give himself away sooner or later. That was why she had been especially vigilant over the past few days. The pain in her shoulder during the collision just now had clearly been used to mask the pain of her hair being plucked out. Unfortunately for them, her senses were extremely sharp. As everyone knew, hair itself was useless for DNA testing. What mattered was the hair follicle attached to the strand. At that moment, the young man was holding 2 strands of her hair delicately between his fingers, as though afraid of contaminating the follicles. It was obvious that he intended to use them for a DNA test. When she questioned him, panic flashed across his face, and he began to struggle. Nora studied him carefully. He had an ordinary face, so plain that he would easily blend into a crowd. Even his age was strange. At first glance, he looked like a 20-year-old college student, but upon closer inspection, he could just as easily pass for someone in his 30s. In the middle of Nora's thoughts, the man suddenly lashed out with his other arm, thrusting straight toward her heart with ruthless speed and precision. Nora's eyes widened slightly. The man showed absolutely no mercy. Had she reacted even a fraction slower, she would have been stabbed. Because she had to release her grip while dodging the attack, the man seized the opportunity to escape. Nora paused for a split second before chasing after him. She was fast, but he was even faster. Clutching a dagger, he shouted, "Get out of the way!" Some students screamed, while others pulled out their phones to call the police. Soon, a campus security officer rushed over. Unfortunately, the man was clearly experienced. He weaved through the mass of students pouring out of classrooms at the end of the day and ultimately vanished without a trace. "Everyone, don't move," the security officers shouted, calming the frightened crowd. "I've already called the police. Patrol officers nearby will be here soon." Nora stood where she was, her gaze lowered. She had originally thought the man was sent by her biological father to obtain a DNA sample, but his murderous intent didn't fit. It was as if killing her didn't matter at all. In that case, it definitely wasn't her biological father. So if not him, then who? Suddenly, Nora recalled Yvette's warning, to keep a low profile, or she would invite trouble. Her eyes flickered. Soon, the patrol officers arrived. Since everyone had witnessed the dagger-wielding assailant targeting Nora, the police went straight to her. Nora was startled when she saw who approached her. "Captain Ford?" Morris Ford nodded. Dressed in plain clothes, his tall, solid frame radiated a sense of security. His posture was upright, his aura solemn and imposing, causing those around him to unconsciously hold him in deep respect. In a low, steady voice, he asked without any expression, "Do you know who the assailant was, Miss Smith? Why would he want to kill you? Do the two of you have any prior conflict?" Nora lowered her gaze and replied calmly, "Patrolling duties don't seem very suitable for someone of your rank, Captain Ford." The police had arrived far too quickly, almost as if he had been nearby all along. Moreover, Morris's special status made it unlikely for him to be assigned to such routine tasks. That left only two possibilities: either he had been tracking the attacker, or he had been tailing her. The second possibility seemed far more likely. Nora narrowed her eyes slightly. If Morris really had been following her without her noticing, then he was truly impressive. Morris showed no embarrassment at being exposed. Instead, he said coldly, "From what I know, you were confined indoors throughout your childhood, Miss Smith. It doesn't seem like you should be a doctor either." For a brief moment, Nora was rendered speechless. Then she smiled and shot back, "Is it illegal for me to be a doctor, Captain Ford?" No, Morris didn't bother hiding the fact that he had investigated her background. "After all, you've saved many lives." Nora shifted the topic. "I don't know who that man was, but perhaps you do, Captain Ford." "I have a few leads," Morris replied. "You'll be in danger over the next few days. I suggest you avoid crowded places." Nora raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it foolish to let minor risks stop us from doing what we must? Besides, I have an important surgery scheduled tomorrow." Morris fell silent for a moment before nodding slightly. "I'll do my best to ensure your safety, Miss Smith. Do whatever you think is necessary." Given his identity, even if she refused protection, it probably wouldn't make a difference. Nora walked over to her car. Before getting in, she paused and asked, "Would you like to inspect the car, Captain Ford? Just in case it's been tampered with." Morris hesitated briefly, then stepped forward and thoroughly checked the car from all sides. Afterward, he said, "It doesn't seem like that man truly intended to kill you. What exactly did he do just now?" Nora lowered her gaze at the thought of her hair being plucked out. Instinctively, she chose to conceal the truth. Shrugging casually, she replied, "I don't know either." Whether Morris believed her or not, he stepped aside without further comment. Nora drove away from the New York University School of Medicine. As she parked at the Andersons' residence, she glanced at the rearview mirror. Along the way back, she had clearly sensed multiple groups following her. Quentin Smith felt as though he had just suffered the equivalent of the Battle of Waterloo in his career. He, Quentin Smith, a proud member of the Smith family and even the nephew of Ian Smith himself, had always been flawless when handling shady operations. Yet this time, he had been utterly humiliated by a little girl. Why was it so damn difficult to get her DNA sample? He hadn't slept for 48 straight hours since receiving the mission, and dark circles now hung beneath his eyes. After endless waiting, he had finally caught her leaving home. He followed Nora all the way to the New York University School of Medicine, even changing into a student outfit, planning to accidentally bump into her and collect the sample. But out of nowhere, some bastard had beaten him to it. Quentin glared at the fleeing man, rage burning in his eyes. When he got angry, the consequences were never mild. Abandoning Nora, he pulled the hood of his black hoodie over his head and went after the man. Nora hadn't chased too far, wary of colliding with students. Quentin, however, happened to be right in the direction the man fled, making pursuit effortless. The man was clearly a professional, making multiple sharp turns along the way. Quentin sneered. When it came to tailing someone, he was second to none in New York. How dare this idiot try to pull tricks in front of him? Keeping his eyes locked on the target, Quentin followed him out of the school. Eventually, they reached a secluded corner. The man finally relaxed, carefully placing the 2 strands of hair he had yanked from Nora's scalp into a plastic bag. In the next instant, Quentin burst forward like a storm and snatched the bag away. Mission accomplished. Now, they could finally run the DNA comparison. Chapter 180. An excited Quentin stuffed the bag of hair into his pocket. By the time he looked up again, the man had already escaped. Quentin smacked himself on the head in annoyance. Since Joel, the head of the Smith family, had asked him to compare Ms. Smith's DNA with Uncle Ian's, it meant he suspected that they might be father and daughter. If they truly were father and daughter, then Nora would be his cousin. That bastard had actually dared to try to kill his cousin just now. He should have caught him and handed him straight to Uncle Ian. Still, he had to admit that the man was indeed agile. Although he didn't possess much brute strength, he excelled in speed and nimbleness. Quentin lowered his gaze. When had someone like that appeared in New York? It seemed like it was time to investigate properly. He took out his phone and called Joel. I got the samples. Then, he briefly reported what had happened. When Joel heard that someone had been targeting Nora, his voice turned solemn. Protect her for now. Don't let anything happen to her, just in case she really is our cousin. Got it. Joel then asked, the samples weren't switched, right? No way. Quentin was completely certain. With absolute confidence, he said, I watched him the entire time after he obtained the samples. He didn't have any chance to switch them. Good. Back at the Andersons, the careless Nora felt no lingering fear at all. Nor did she feel any sense of urgency. Instead, she took out her laptop and began investigating sponsor Grandpa's identity for her daughter. But in the end, the man's Messenger account was encrypted. Although she could forcibly decrypt it and locate him, doing so would expose her identity as the hacker Q. If she bypassed the firewall without breaking it, however, it would take time. Nora hesitated for a moment before quietly closing the program. She sent Cherry a message. I only found out that he's a New Yorker. I couldn't find anything else. Cherry replied almost instantly. You definitely didn't try hard enough, Mommy. With your invincible skills, there's no way you can't find out what you want. Despite being apart for several days, the little brat was still an expert flatterer. Nora sighed. I'm going to bed. I'll look into it again after tomorrow's operation. Okie dokie. I knew Mommy is the best. Cherry loves you. Nora couldn't be bothered with her dramatic flattery. She stopped the voice messages and went to sleep. The child's surgery was scheduled for the next day, so she needed proper rest. The operation was held at New York Hospital. Director Shaw was the head of the Department of Neurosurgery there. It was a major hospital, comparable in reputation to hospital finest. Nora arrived at the hospital on time, parked her car, and entered through the exclusive elevator reserved for medical staff. Doctors and patients' families used separate routes. Michael and the others were already waiting for Anti inside the sterile zone. Lisa, dressed in a sterile surgical gown, stood at the back of the group, her eyes shining brightly. She was finally going to meet Anti. Although Anti had already accepted her as a postgraduate student, this would be the first time Lisa was meeting Anti in person. Just thinking about it made her nervous. At the same time, the people around her were whispering excitedly. "Oh my God! I'm actually going to be in the same operation as Anti. I feel insanely lucky too. But Lisa's definitely the happiest. I heard she wasn't even on the original list. This operation is so important that even doctoral students and professors wanted to observe it. She's the only graduate student here. What's so surprising about that? In my opinion, Lisa will definitely participate in all of Anti's operations in the future." Lisa lowered her head shyly, embarrassed by the praise. Tina, however, frowned and scolded them. "Stop gossiping. Get ready to enter the scrub room for disinfection." Tina was both the lead instructor and the second surgeon for the operation. Aside from the critical procedures she would handle herself, Anti would assign her additional tasks. They could essentially be considered operating side by side. After being reprimanded, the others exchanged looks, stuck out their tongues, and entered the scrub room to disinfect, putting on masks, scrub caps, and gloves. Lisa followed behind them. Just as she was about to enter, Tina sneered and said mockingly, "You're just Anti's student. What's there to be so proud of? Everyone knows Anti has been based overseas and won't return to develop their career here. Staying in the country puts you in a pretty awkward and embarrassing position, doesn't it?" Lisa frowned. She wanted to retort, but remembering that Tina was a professor, she swallowed her words. After disinfection, Tina stared straight at her and ordered coldly, "You're responsible for managing the surgical instruments and surgical sponges." Lisa froze. Those duties were normally handled by accompanying nurses, yet Tina was assigning them to her instead. She was deliberately suppressing her. Lisa bit her lip, but could only nod reluctantly in the end. They then exited and waited for the chief surgeon to arrive. At that moment, Tina suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure through the window outside the door. She froze. Nora Smith? Why was she here? Had she still not given up and was planning to force her way into the operating room? "Professor York, what are you looking at?" a doctor asked. Tina immediately withdrew her gaze. Scanning the room, she spotted Michael, who was nervously reviewing the key points of the operation. His expression was solemn and focused. Pretending to approach casually, she asked, "Dr. Lang, did you see Miss Smith?" Michael was startled. "What?" "She just walked past," Tina said at once. "It looks like she went into the changing room." "The changing room?" Michael was stunned. Tina continued, "Anti should be in the changing room right now, correct? If Miss Smith barges in like that, won't she disturb Anti?" Michael rushed over the moment she finished speaking. Anti never revealed their appearance, everyone knew that. Director Shaw had specifically prepared a private changing room just for Anti. No one else was allowed inside. The only person who would see Anti's real face today was Michael, because he was Anti's assistant. When Michael reached the changing room, he saw Nora pushing the door open. Alarmed, he stepped forward and grabbed her arm. "What are you doing? Do you know where you are? This changing room is reserved exclusively for Anti." Nora raised her eyebrows and looked at him calmly. "I know." Michael frowned and snapped angrily, "Then why are you still trying to go in? Can you take responsibility if you disturb Anti and affect today's operation? I know you desperately want to enter the operating room, but those shameless, pestering job-hunting tactics don't work here. You." Before he could finish, Nora pulled her arm free. The woman asked flatly, almost amused, "How am I supposed to operate if I don't change?" Michael's eyes flew open. What did you say? Chapter 181. Nora didn't look at him anymore. Instead, she went straight into the changing room. Michael stood outside the door, completely frozen in place. What Miss Smith had said just now. Was she saying that she was anti? This, surely not. Michael swallowed hard. He had never once imagined that Nora could possibly be anti. After all, mastering surgical skills took time, and one needed to perform countless operations to develop proper technique and intuition. Most of the outstanding surgeons in their field were middle-aged. Not only did they have the stamina to endure long procedures, but they were also highly experienced. Therefore, everyone assumed that anti must be a middle-aged man or woman. Nora was far too young. Given her age, she might not even be qualified to be Lily, Anti's first assistant, right? Was she really anti? While Michael's expression shifted again and again, the door opened. Nora emerged after changing. Her hair was neatly tied up, and she was wearing a surgical gown and a surgical cap. Surgical caps were fastened very tightly to prevent any hair from being exposed, so as to keep germs and bacteria out of the operating room. Most people looked terrible wearing one, but with Nora's face fully revealed, it only made her look even more striking. Her expression was cold, her eyes lowered. The air around her remained as casual as ever. Previously, she had given Michael a lazy and somewhat frivolous impression, but now she felt completely different. This was self-assurance and confidence. As expected of his idol. Michael's eyes lit up. He watched as she walked to the sink beside him. After meticulously washing her hands and fingers, she turned to look at him. Michael was so excited that he felt like running several laps around the hospital. He had finally met his idol. Seeing him stare at her as though he'd gone daft, Nora narrowed her almond-shaped eyes slightly and said with a faint smile, "Anti is human, not a god." Michael. He suddenly recalled how he had once refuted Nora and misunderstood her words, thinking she was belittling Anti when she had said that earlier. In reality, she had merely been self-effacing. His face flushed red. He swallowed and said, "Ant." Before he could finish, approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. It was likely the medical staff who had finished changing and were about to enter. Nora abruptly turned her head and raised a finger, signaling him to keep quiet. Michael's words immediately stuck in his throat. Nora took out a surgical mask and quickly put it on, followed by a pair of goggles. Her movements were neither rushed nor sluggish, it was as though she had calculated the timing perfectly. By the time the others arrived, she was completely covered. No one could see her true appearance at all. "Is Anti ready, Michael?" The voice reached them before the group did. Soon after, Tina led several medical staff over to wash their hands. When they saw that Anti had already changed, the entire group was stunned. Someone couldn't help but ask softly, "Professor, Anti?" Nora looked at them. Her gaze swept past Tina and finally landed on Lisa, who stood at the back of the group, staring at her with eyes just as bright as Michael's. She nodded slightly, instantly igniting excitement among them. "Anti, you're my idol. Professor Anti, I'm so lucky to witness your surgery in person. Ah, I'm so excited." Nora raised her eyebrows and joked, "Remember to keep your hands steady." The doctor immediately straightened up. "Don't worry, Anti. There definitely won't be any problems." Amid the lively atmosphere, a discordant voice suddenly rang out. "Where is Nora Smith, Dr. Lang?" Tina's voice was neither loud nor soft, yet it clearly reached Nora's ears. She looked at Michael and said, "I clearly saw her just now. Is she hiding somewhere so she can sneak into the operating room?" Michael. He wanted to say that Anti was Nora herself. But recalling how Anti had gestured for him to stay silent earlier, she must want to keep her identity hidden. Thus, he replied, "Don't bring that up anymore." "Why not?" Tina said. "I'm only trying to warn Anti, in case she suddenly appears in the middle of the operation." She deliberately sighed, clearly trying to leave a bad impression of Nora. She was afraid Anti would give Nora special treatment because of the hunts. Logically, Anti should ask what had happened next, allowing Tina to elaborate. But unexpectedly, The eyes behind the goggles were nothing but icy cold. She must have imagined it. After all, Anti had been joking with the others earlier and seemed rather even-tempered. Seeing that Anti didn't respond, Tina continued on her own. My apologies, Professor Anti. This is an oversight on the school's part for allowing someone so eager to observe your surgery to break in. If we catch her later, we will definitely sue her. This has already reached the level of serious medical malpractice. Nora. Which I did. Tina used to see her breaking in. Anyone unaware of the situation would think she had committed something truly despicable. Her expression grew colder. Afraid Anti might become angry, Michael quickly stepped in front of Tina. Alright, that's enough. Let's head to the operating room. Out of respect for Michael, Tina nodded and motioned for the others to follow. Everyone needed to enter the operating room early to prepare and set up the necessary equipment. When Lisa passed Nora, she cautiously greeted her, "Hello, Professor Anti." Nora smiled at her and said encouragingly, "I'm quite busy right now. For the time being, follow Dr. Shaw and do your best to learn from him." Her voice sounded strangely familiar to Lisa. Lisa glanced at her hesitantly. The eyes behind the goggles also felt familiar. Before she could think further, Tina scolded her sharply, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and go in." Lisa quickly withdrew her gaze. She glanced at Nora once more before following the others inside. Nora frowned. Her cousin was far too much of a pushover. Did she really let just anyone bark orders at her? She was about to speak when Tina suddenly approached and said, "Professor Anti, I'm Tina York, a professor specially invited by the medical university. It's an honor to participate in the same operation as you." Nora stared at her. Tina continued calmly, "Professor Anti, did you accept Lisa Black as your postgraduate student because of Nora Smith's connections with Mr. Hunt?" Nora. Tina went on relentlessly. To be honest, Lisa's exam results weren't outstanding back then. Moreover, her research topic is rather unpopular. Oh, and she's Nora Smith's cousin, someone who doesn't know what's good for her, just like Nora. That crossed the line. Nora had planned to deal with this woman after the operation, but she was simply too noisy. She raised her eyebrows slightly and said coolly, "I didn't know I was someone who doesn't know what's good for myself." Chapter 182. I didn't know I was someone who couldn't tell what's good for myself. When the woman's low voice reached her ears, Tina wondered if she had misheard. She hurriedly explained, "I wasn't talking about you. Before she could finish, she suddenly understood something. She looked at Nora incredulously and sputtered, You. She failed to finish her sentence even after repeating, "you" 3 times. Nora, however, no longer paid her any attention. Instead, she turned and walked into the operating room. Tina, still in shock, stood rooted to the spot, staring after her. This continued until someone called out, "Dr. York?" Only then did Tina finally come back to her senses. She walked into the operating room like a zombie, glancing from time to time at the resolute figure ahead of her. Nora Smith was Anti. No. She must be dreaming. How could Nora Smith possibly be Anti? Tina swallowed hard. While she was still in a daze, everyone in the operating room had already begun preparing for their respective tasks. The patient had been anesthetized and was unconscious. Nora put on a pair of gloves and began drawing the incision lines for the craniotomy on the child's head with a marker. Then, she took a step back and reached for a scalpel. At that moment, "Dr. York?" Someone called out, snapping Tina back to reality. Only then did she hastily pick up a scalpel and step forward to perform the craniotomy. Nora frowned. Her gaze swept across everyone in the room. All of them looked solemn and focused. The excitement from earlier had completely disappeared. Once they were at the operating table, they were doctors saving lives. Lisa was a newcomer who had never entered an operating room before, and Tina had even deliberately made things difficult for her earlier. Yet now, Lisa stared seriously at the patient, carrying out every task assigned to her without making a single mistake. Nora felt that she hadn't misjudged her after all. Though her little cousin was a pushover in daily life, she could remain focused and unaffected at the operating table. In contrast, Tina, an experienced surgeon who had performed countless operations, was behaving like this. It was utterly irresponsible. Nora's expression turned icy. She stepped forward, stopped Tina, and said, "I'll do it instead." Although a craniotomy was a relatively simple procedure, every operation had to be treated with caution and respect. Everyone could see that Tina was not in the right state of mind. No one questioned Antai's decision. Only Tina frowned and glared at her furiously. However, no one was allowed to refute the chief surgeon's orders in the operating room. She could only retreat unwillingly. Nora lowered her head and began the operation in earnest. For a while, the operating room was silent, filled only with the sounds of careful movement. Forceps. Nora suddenly stretched her hand out behind her. Tina, whom Nora had pushed aside earlier, froze for a moment. She hurriedly picked up an instrument from the table and handed it to her, but Nora did not take it. Tina looked up, only to hear Antai's frigid, slightly mocking voice say, "Are you incapable of telling the difference between forceps and hemostats, Dr. York? Were you really the head of the surgery department at Hospital Finest? Have you actually performed surgeries before? Are the patients you operated on still alive? I seriously suspect that the person who hired you was blind." Every word was like a knife, viciously slashing across Tina's face, making her feel as if her skin had been shredded and thrown onto the floor. The students around them stared at her. All the blood rushed to Tina's head in an instant. She suddenly screamed, "You're deliberately picking on me." The moment she finished shouting, she flung the object in her hand straight at Nora. Already on high alert, Nora swiftly kicked Tina away while bringing her arm down to steady the instrument in her hand. Bang! Tina slammed hard against the wall and collapsed onto the floor. She tried to get up, but a sickly sweet taste filled her mouth. The next second, she coughed up a mouthful of blood. No one in the operating room managed to react in time to the sudden outburst. Nora, however, remained perfectly steady, still holding the craniotomy instrument in one hand. Forceps. Her calm voice snapped everyone back to reality. Michael, who was farther away, moved to pass her the tool, but someone reacted faster. It was Lisa. Michael was briefly surprised, then couldn't help sighing inwardly. Antai truly had an eye for talent. Everyone thought the postgraduate student she had chosen was a pushover, yet she reacted instantly in a crisis. She was completely focused on the operation. Despite the brief incident, the surgery proceeded smoothly. 4 hours later, Nora completed the final step. She stepped aside and instructed, "Stitch the wound." Roger. The others assisted Michael as he sutured the wound. Nora took the opportunity to flex her fingers, wrists, and shoulders. A 4-hour surgery was nothing to her. After stretching, she finally glanced toward Tina, who lay unconscious on the floor some distance away. No one could have predicted that she would lose her mind inside the operating room. Otherwise, Nora would never have allowed her inside to endanger the patient. That was also why Nora hadn't held back with that kick. She casually lifted Tina and dragged her out of the operating room. Some of the others happened to look over. When they saw Antai's retreating figure, a chill ran down their spines. 20 minutes later, Tina slowly regained consciousness. Director Shaw and several others stood before her. He reprimanded her sternly, "You've truly disappointed us, Tina. How could you start a fight in the operating room? If it weren't for Antai, were you planning to ruin the surgery as well?" Tina's eyes widened in shock. Director Shaw then announced her punishment. "Your medical license will be revoked. The university will also strip you of your professorship and dismiss you." Revoke her license? If that happened, she would never be able to perform surgery again. Her entire career would be destroyed. Tina panicked. She leapt up from the bed and cried, "Director Shaw, I..." Before she could finish, the police stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Dr. York, but the patient's family has filed a police report accusing you of interfering with the surgery. Please cooperate with our investigation." As the police escorted Tina away, Nora had already changed back into her clothes. She walked out slowly, her steps unhurried. Just as she was about to leave the floor, a voice called out behind her. "Miss Smith." Surprised, Nora turned around and saw Joel standing a short distance away. He looked as gentle as ever, his slightly upturned eyes narrowed as he studied her with unmistakable scrutiny. Chapter 183. Why was he here? Nora was wondering about that when Joel walked over. There was also surprise on his face as he asked, "Why are you here?" Nora raised her eyebrows and replied ambiguously, "I'm a doctor." "Why are you here, though, Mr. Smith?" She was a doctor. Joel narrowed his eyes slightly and glanced toward the operating room. Anti had an operation scheduled here today, so he had rushed over specifically to ask Anti to treat his uncle's illness. Because of Anti's presence, only one operation had been arranged on this floor. Since she was here, didn't that mean she had just met Anti? Joel's gaze returned to the operating room. The surgery should have ended by now, right? He didn't have time to continue talking with Nora, so he nodded and said, "I'm here to look for someone." Just as he finished speaking, the doors of the operating room opened. Michael walked out with the others, and Joel immediately strode over to them. Michael had completed the suturing long ago. The operation had gone perfectly. Nora had only left after she was informed of the outcome. Seeing Joel heading toward the operating room, Nora turned and walked away. She could finally go home and get a good night's sleep. Joel didn't spare her another glance. Instead, he went straight up to Michael and said, "Hello, Anti." "Michael?" He removed his surgical mask and stared at Joel in astonishment. "I'm not Anti." Joel was stunned. "Then where's Anti?" "Anti left a long time ago." "What?" Joel frowned deeply. He had arrived when the surgery was nearing its end and had waited outside the entire time. The only person who had left after the operation was. Just as suspicion began to form in his mind, Michael remembered that Nora didn't want her identity revealed, so he said, "Yes, Mr. Anti has already left." "Mr. Was Anti a man?" That wasn't particularly surprising. Most surgeons were male. Joel frowned. Although his uncle's diagnosis hadn't been confirmed yet, it would always be safer to have Anti examine him. He hadn't expected to miss him. Joel sighed, left the operating room, and headed downstairs. When he entered the parking lot, he happened to see a familiar Jeep driving past him. He glanced at it. The young woman in the driver's seat was staring straight ahead, clearly in a hurry to go home. She didn't even look at him as she passed. Joel shook his head and got into his car. "Are we going home, Mr. Smith?" the chauffeur asked. "No. We're going to pick up Mia." "Understood." The chauffeur started the engine and drove toward Golden Sunshine Kindergarten. Along the way, Joel turned to stare out the window. The amicable expression he usually wore had long vanished, replaced by silence. He had been personally sending Mia to and picking her up from school lately, yet he hadn't seen her even once. When he asked Mia about it, she said Miss Turner was still working at the kindergarten. So did that mean she was deliberately avoiding him? At the kindergarten. The final class of the day was dance. The kindergarten's anniversary celebration was only a few days away, and the children would be performing on stage. As a result, extra dance classes had been scheduled recently. Pete wore a sullen expression as he danced stiffly along with the other children. Fortunately, children's dances didn't distinguish between boys and girls. Even so, embarrassment still crept over him. Because he was wearing a skirt. Pete sighed heavily as he danced. Was Cherry having such a great time with Daddy that she'd forgotten to come back? They still hadn't switched back yet. If this continued, he would become a professional little dancer soon enough. After another round of practice, Tanya clapped her hands and told the children to take a short break where they stood. Pete needed to use the bathroom, so he got up and walked outside. The moment he exited the dance studio, he noticed a small figure dancing just outside the door. Mia was frail and never participated in sports or dance classes. Yet right now, she was standing on tiptoe, gently spinning. She was practicing the same routine they had just danced. Pete walked over. Noticing him, Mia stopped and looked at him with her big eyes and small oval face. "You guys looked great just now, Cherry." Pete was silent for a moment before asking, "Why are you here?" Mia lowered her head and fidgeted with her fingers. I was too bored." There were painting and writing classes happening elsewhere during dance time, yet Mia hadn't gone to any of them. Instead, she had come here to secretly watch. Pete suddenly understood. He asked, "Do you like dancing?" Mia hesitated, then nodded, only to shake her head again a moment later. Her timid behavior made even Pete, who usually minded his own business, ask, "So do you like it or not?" Mia had always been introverted, keeping everything bottled up. Yet for some reason, when she was facing Cherry, well, Pete in Cherry's body, she was able to speak freely. "I like it," she said softly. "But my mommy doesn't allow me to dance." Her head drooped sadly. She had always loved dancing and couldn't stop herself from moving whenever she heard music. But her mother said she wasn't in good health and forbade her from learning. The doctor had clearly said before that moderate exercise could help strengthen her body, so why was mommy always stopping her? As Mia was lost in thought, Pete suddenly grabbed her hand, pulled her into the dance studio, and brought her before Tanya. "Dance the routine from just now," he said. "Tanya? Mia?" Mia glanced nervously at Tanya, then at Pete. Encouraged, the timid girl performed the routine in front of Tanya. Tanya's eyes lit up. To be honest, she had wanted to take on an apprentice for years and groom them for competitions. But she had never found the right candidate. She hadn't expected Mia to be so naturally gifted. Among all the children, Mia was practically the best dancer. She had a slender frame and remarkable flexibility, perfect for dancing. Tanya looked at her and asked, "Do you want to learn how to dance?" Mia looked at Pete. Pete nodded. Mia nodded vigorously. "Yes." Tanya was immediately tempted. The words "Are you willing to learn from me?" almost slipped out. But when she remembered Mia's identity, she hesitated for a long time before finally sighing and standing up. She didn't say anything. Mia was that man's daughter. Tanya couldn't take her as an apprentice, otherwise, she would become entangled with him again. At that moment, the dismissal bell rang. Tanya said, "All right, everyone, go back to your classes and get ready to go home." The children scattered. Only Mia kept turning back to look at her. Tanya hardened her heart and looked away. At the kindergarten entrance, Joel waited for Mia when his phone rang. Quentin's voice came through as soon as he answered. "The DNA test results are out." Chapter 184. Joel tensed up and asked nervously, "What are the results?" The previous generation of the Smith family had 3 sons, with Ian being the youngest. None of them had sisters. In their generation, no one had given birth to any daughters either, although Ian had adopted one. If Nora really turned out to be their cousin, that would be wonderful. Moreover, it would also give Ian the courage to keep living. While Joel was lost in thought, Quentin's reply came through. The moment he read it, he froze. His upturned eyes slowly lowered, and after a long pause, he finally said, "I see." After hanging up, Joel turned to look out the window, deep in contemplation. Some time later, as though he had finally made up his mind, he withdrew his gaze. At that moment, students began streaming out of the kindergarten. Joel stepped out of the car. Golden Sunshine Kindergarten was attended exclusively by children from wealthy and influential families. Naturally, the parents who came to pick them up were either rich or held high social status. In the past, Mia's mother had always been the one to pick up both Mia and Brandon. But now that Joel was coming every day, the other parents had begun showing up in person as well. "Oh, are you here to pick up your child too, Mr. Smith? Nice to meet you." "What a coincidence, Mr. Smith. Picking up your child as well?" "I'm the general manager of Glory Group, Mr. Smith. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." When Tanya emerged from the kindergarten holding Pete's hand, she was greeted by the sight of company directors lining up at the entrance. The kindergarten teachers couldn't help but whisper among themselves. "Oh my goodness, those parents usually send nannies or bodyguards. Why are they all here personally today? If you throw a stone at random, you'd probably hit someone worth millions. Don't you get it? Everyone's here because of Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is so handsome. No wonder Mia is already so pretty at such a young age, she must have inherited it from him. He's graceful, gentle, elegant. Sigh, I'm so jealous of Ms. Lynn. If only Mr. Smith would say a word to me. Miss Turner, aren't you the dance teacher? Why don't you go talk to Mr. Smith? Tanya." She lifted her head and glanced toward the entrance. The man standing there seemed aloof and detached from the world, exuding the natural bearing of a noble gentleman. Even after 5 years, he was still dazzling. 5 years ago, she had once said, "I want to hide you away so no one else can see you. You're too outstanding, I'm afraid someone will steal you from me." Yet, in the end, he still became someone else's husband. At the thought of Joel and Hillary being married, Tanya immediately looked away. Pete noticed her expression and asked curiously, "God, Mom, why aren't you teaching Mia how to dance? I think she dances really well." Mia was thinner than most children, with little baby fat on her face. Her small oval face and pointed chin gave her an ethereal look. When she danced, her movements were light and airy, like a butterfly. Pete thought it would be a huge waste if she didn't pursue dancing. Tanya stroked Pete's head and replied, "Because her parents don't allow her to dance. Otherwise, how could a 5-year-old with such talent have never learned before? Besides, she truly didn't want to get involved with the Smith family again." Pete tilted his head, seeming to understand. After leaving the kindergarten, Tanya led Pete toward the roadside. Nora, that unreliable woman, had driven off early that morning, so the two of them had no choice but to take a cab. Since it was hard to hail one nearby, they walked down another street. Joel had noticed Tanya long ago. As a dancer, she had long legs and a slender waist. Even in simple clothes, she was still as captivating as ever. He had expected at least a glance from her, but instead, she didn't look at him at all and led the child straight across the street. A flicker of emotion passed through his eyes. After clenching his fists slightly, he picked up Mia and got into the car. Just as Tanya and Pete were waiting for a cab, an extended Lincoln stopped in front of them. The door opened, revealing Joel's strikingly handsome face. "Where are you going?" "I'll give you a ride," he said. Startled, Tanya instinctively looked around. Seeing that no one had noticed, she sighed in relief. Then she pulled Pete back a step and said guardedly, "No, thank you." Joel replied gently but firmly, "Don't make me get out of the car and kidnap you." Tanya. With parents and teachers nearby beginning to approach, Tanya didn't want to cause a scene. She could only pick Pete up and quickly get into the car. As the door closed, Mia called out happily, "Cherry. Miss Turner." Tanya smiled at her. Pete took the initiative to sit beside Mia. Tanya frowned slightly. That left her with no choice but to sit next to Joel. She immediately shifted away, putting distance between them. Joel noticed and frowned. Lowering his gaze, he asked, "Your address?" Only then did Tanya respond. After giving him the Andersons' address, Joel asked, "You're staying with the Andersons?" Tanya nodded. Joel looked down. "Isn't it inconvenient staying in someone else's home? Don't you have another place?" Tanya turned away coldly. "That's none of your business, Mr. Smith." "Mr. Smith again." Joel took a deep breath. "You're right. We have nothing to do with each other." Tanya clenched her jaw. Indeed. They had nothing to do with each other. In fact, he probably hated her. Was that why he forbade Mia from dancing? Because she herself was a dancer? Tanya hadn't expected his hatred to run that deep. Yet if he hated her so much, why was he sending them home? As she hesitated, Joel said, "I misunderstood things the other day." The other day, Was he referring to the hospital incident, when he mistook her for Mr. Hunt's lover? With a cold expression, Tanya replied sarcastically, "That wasn't your fault, Mr. Smith. I just look like someone's mistress." Joel! He knew she was mocking him. But in her reaction, he caught faint traces of the woman she used to be. After a long breath, he said, "You don't have to belittle yourself. That's not what I meant. Forget it. I'm driving you home because I want to apologize." "You can keep your apology," Tanya said icily. "Just stay away from me in the future, unless you want me to keep offending your eyes." Joel! The Andersons' villa was close by, and they arrived before the conversation could continue. The chauffeur even felt a chill run down his spine when he stopped the car. "Let's get out," Tanya said. She was about to exit with Pete when the boy suddenly turned to Joel and asked, "Mia's daddy, why won't you let Mia learn how to dance?" Chapter 185. His question stunned Joel. "What?" Pete glanced at the cowering Mia and said sincerely, "She likes dancing very much." Restricting a child's hobbies and interests is not something a good father does. Seeing Joel's expression tense and noticing that he remained silent, Tanya beckoned to Pete and said, "Come on down now." Pete hopped off the car. The two of them entered the Andersons' villa hand in hand. The car door slowly closed as they disappeared through the doorway. When the car started up again, Joel finally turned his gaze to Mia. He beckoned to her, and she immediately walked over obediently. Trying to please him, she said cautiously, "Mia doesn't like dancing, Daddy." Her eyes flickered as she spoke, panic clearly visible in them. For some reason, Joel's heart ached. He asked softly, "Was it your mother who forbade you from learning to dance, Mia?" Mia nodded, then shook her head again. In the end, she lowered her head and said uneasily, "Mommy said that Daddy hates people who dance, so she told me not to learn." "Don't worry, Daddy. Mia won't dance." Her words made Joel's eyes widen in shock. Joel had always wanted to understand Mia's interests and preferences as she grew up. Yet he had discovered that everything she liked to eat and play with were all things he himself liked. He had always assumed she inherited those traits from him. He never expected that all of it was actually the result of Hillary's deliberate training. Joel's expression darkened. "Daddy doesn't dislike dancing." Mia's eyes lit up instantly. "Then can Mia learn to dance with Miss Turner?" Joel looked at her, his jaw tightening. "Do you like Miss Turner very much, Mia?" Mia gave a timid smile and nodded. "Yeah." Lowering her head, she twiddled her thumbs and said softly, "Miss Turner dances really beautifully. I secretly watched her a few times. She smiles a lot too. I like her very much, but Mommy doesn't like Miss Turner." She looked dejected as she added, "And Miss Turner doesn't like Mia either." Her voice turned disappointed. "She refused to teach me today." Tanya had refused to teach her. It must be because she truly didn't want anything to do with him. Joel's long fingers clenched slightly, his gaze turning even colder than before. After rubbing Mia's head gently and falling silent for a moment, he said, "It's okay. If you want to learn how to dance, Daddy will think of something." At the Andersons' residence, Nora had just stepped out of the bath when Pete returned home. Wearing a silk nightgown, she let out a lazy yawn and collapsed onto the bed. Pete greeted her, "Hi, Mommy." Nora waved casually. "Yeah. Go do your homework yourself." "Okay." Pete headed to the study. Nora was just about to fall asleep when her phone suddenly rang. Cherry's young, tender voice came through the line. "My dearest Mommy, have you found out where sponsor Grandpa is?" They had been chatting on Messenger for more than a month. Their friendship had grown stronger day by day, but the entire previous day had passed without a single reply. Why hadn't sponsor Grandpa come online yet? Cherry was panicking. As though her response were perfectly reasonable, Nora replied lazily, "Oh, I forgot." Cherry sighed. Then, "Are you willing to look him up for me now, Mommy?" "No, I'm not." Cherry was so angry that her little chest rose and fell rapidly. Reminding herself that this woman was her biological mother, she forced herself to endure it and asked, "Then when will you be free to look him up for me?" Nora raised an eyebrow. "When I wake up, I guess." "Alright, I'm hanging up." She was really sleepy. Beep, beep, beep. The disconnected tone sent a chill through Cherry's heart. Standing in front of the massive villa, her shoulders slumped and tears welled up in her eyes. She was currently staying with her father at the Hunt's family home. The so-called family home was actually a manor. By rights, since Justin was the head of the Hunt's family, he should have lived there. However, because the entire family lived together, including his second uncle's family, and because of the previous incident involving old Mrs. Hunt, Justin had taken Pete and moved elsewhere. After Justin had taught his second uncle's family a harsh lesson and obtained leverage over them, they became much more obedient and no longer dared to provoke him. With Justin and Pete staying in the main house, Cherry hadn't encountered any other Hunt's family members yet, despite having returned for 2 days. Lost in thought, Cherry suddenly saw Justin stride into the room. He looked down at her and asked gently, "There's a family dinner tonight. Do you want to join?" A family dinner? Cherry loved lively gatherings. Besides, many elders would be there, which meant she'd gain more people to dote on her. She nodded eagerly. "Yeah, I want to go." "Okay." Justin smiled. If it were his son, he would definitely have refused. As expected, his daughter was livelier and far more cheerful. He bent down, scooped Cherry up with one arm, and carried her downstairs. The Hunt's family held a dinner every month. As long as they were in New York, all family members were required to attend. This was a strict family rule. By the time they entered the main living room, it was already filled with people. Justin's second uncle, Roger Hunt, sat quietly in a corner. Roger's son, Fatty, was playing on his phone with his head down. Aside from them, all other Hunt's family members were present. Old Mrs. Hunt had already been discharged from the hospital and was seated beside the master seat. The master seat belonged to the head of the family. The moment Justin appeared, everyone stood up. Even his elders had to show him respect. Mrs. Hunt, the oldest among them, spoke first. "You're here, Justin." Justin nodded politely. Then, as though teaching a child manners, though in reality reminding her, he said, "Say hello to your great-grandma, Pete." Cherry looked at Mrs. Hunt with curiosity. So this was the great-grandma who had fallen earlier, causing her brother to be accused of pushing her? Mrs. Hunt studied Cherry carefully. After regaining consciousness post-surgery, she had learned the truth of what happened. She felt deep guilt that her son's family had used her to frame a child. Pete was different from other children. He had mild autism and rarely spoke. After that incident, the fragile relationship they had painstakingly built must have been almost completely destroyed. Sighing inwardly, Mrs. Hunt looked at Cherry cautiously and said regretfully, "Never mind, let's not make things difficult for the child anymore." "Yes, exactly. Don't make things difficult for Pete anymore. He has mild autism, you know." Raymond Hunt, Justin's second uncle, chimed in. Though his words seemed supportive, his tone was mocking, clearly humiliating Pete in front of everyone. He added deliberately, "He doesn't even like talking. How could a child who didn't talk possibly inherit the company in the future? Even if Justin currently held power, once he grew old, wouldn't everything eventually fall into their hands anyway?" Chapter 186. Mrs. Hunt became angry the moment Raymond said that. She snapped, "Pete isn't autistic, Raymond. Don't you dare spout nonsense." Raymond curled his lips disdainfully. Yeah, Pete isn't autistic. He just doesn't like talking to people, that's all." Sigh, "But he can't keep avoiding people forever when he takes over the company in the future, right?" Roger said, "Don't say that, Dad. Who knows? He might recover once he grows up." Chester failed to notice that they were mocking Pete. He also didn't recognize the child as the future head of the family and merely thought of him as his quiet, reticent nephew. Thus, he echoed them, saying, "Yeah, it'll be fine once he grows up." Raymond scoffed. "That's what everyone said when he was a baby, but you don't see his condition improving over the past few years either." But I'm probably worrying over nothing. After all, Justin will surely have everything planned out perfectly for the company's future, right? He then turned to Fatty and reprimanded him. And you too, Fatty. Don't just study all the time. What's the use of being such an academic? All that studying has made you stupid instead. What matters most in a leader is eloquence. If you can't speak well, how are people supposed to trust and believe in you? His words were both openly and subtly demeaning Pete. All the other hunts turned to look at Pete when they heard this. Indeed, what was the use of a genius if he was autistic? Seeing that his words were having an effect, Raymond immediately became smug. Roger, however, narrowed his eyes. In previous family dinners, Pete either wouldn't attend at all, or Justin would lose his temper the moment someone mentioned the words, mild autism. Why was Justin keeping quiet this time? Could it be that? He was still pondering this when the little fellow in Justin's arms suddenly called out sweetly, "Hi, great-grandma." Roger? Raymond was also dumbfounded. He stared at the child in Justin's arms in disbelief and blurted out, "Were you the one talking just now, Pete?" Cherry rolled her eyes and looked at Justin. Then, in her young but clear voice, she asked, "Daddy, is that Grandpa deaf or blind? Why are his ears and eyes so bad? Since our family is so rich, you should get a doctor to check him." The corners of Justin's lips curved upward into a smile. His usually cold expression relaxed noticeably. He glanced at Raymond and replied leisurely, "He's very old, so his hearing and eyesight aren't very good anymore." Raymond. Cherry nodded adorably. "Oh, I see." Mrs. Hunt, on the other hand, was so excited upon hearing Cherry's voice that her eyes reddened. She wanted to reach out and hold her, but recalling that the child used to dislike physical contact the most, she withdrew her arms and asked with a hopeful smile, "Is Pete talking now? Has he recovered?" Justin lowered his gaze indifferently and didn't respond. Instead, he bent down and put his daughter on the floor. The moment Cherry's feet touched the ground, she ran straight toward Mrs. Hunt. The little figure plunged into the old lady's arms and called out sweetly, "Great-grandma." Not only was the child soft and sweet-smelling, but she was finally willing to let her hug her. Mrs. Hunt grew so excited that even her hands began to tremble. She responded with an emotional sound and, without hesitation, removed the ring on her finger and pressed it into Cherry's hands. "Here, this is for you, Pete." Everyone present was shocked. Mrs. Hunt's ring was made of top-grade jadeite that took hundreds of thousands of years to form. It was worth over $10 million. It had been given to her by the late Mr. Hunt when they got married. Back then, it was declared a family heirloom to be passed down through generations. Mrs. Hunt had urged Justin to marry for years so that she could give this ring to her future daughter-in-law. It symbolized the status of the female master of the Hunt's family. Why had she given it to Pete in a moment of excitement instead? Raymond panicked. He stepped forward with a forced smile and said, "Look at you, Mom, you're confused again. This is a woman's ring. Why would you give it to Pete?" The old lady glanced at him and replied calmly, "Pete can keep it and give it to his wife in the future." In other words, Pete's future wife would be the female master of the Hunt's family. That meant Pete's position as the future head of the family was unquestionable. Mrs. Hunt was openly backing Pete. Raymond frowned and glanced at Fatty with dissatisfaction before saying, "You shouldn't be biased, Mom. Since you gave that to Pete, what are you going to give Fatty?" The chubby boy also looked at her expectantly. Mrs. Hunt smiled and replied, "Fatty can ask his Uncle Justin for whatever he wants. Justin is rich, and he's also the head of the family." Raymond's expression darkened further. Roger also lowered his gaze. Seeing that the two of them had finally stopped stirring trouble, Mrs. Hunt turned back to Cherry and said, "Put the ring away properly, Pete." Cherry hurriedly replied, "This is too precious, great-grandma. I can't accept it. One shouldn't reject gifts from elders. Just take it." Cherry subconsciously wanted to look for Nora, but then realized Mommy wasn't present. She turned to Justin instead. Justin lowered his eyes and smiled faintly. He stepped forward, took the ring from Cherry's hand, and said, "Since great-grandma has given it to you, you should accept it." But you're still young, so you can't wear it yet. We'll let your mommy wear it first. Mommy? Mrs. Hunt's eyes lit up instantly. What mommy? Everyone else also turned to look at him. Had the man who had sworn to remain single his entire life finally decided to get married? Raymond and Roger immediately felt a sense of crisis. If Justin married and had another 2 sons, wouldn't Fatty's chances shrink even further? Both of them frowned deeply. Suddenly, Raymond said, "All right, the adults need to talk now. Why don't you kids go to the side and play some games?" He shot Fatty a meaningful look. Fatty immediately understood. He stepped forward, grabbed Cherry's hand, and said, "Come on, Pete, let's play a game. This mobile game is really popular right now. Anyone can play it as long as they're not too stupid. You know how to play, right?" It was common knowledge that Pete was a bookish nerd whose only hobby was studying. That meant he would definitely be terrible at games. "Cherry?" Before she could respond, Mrs. Hunt panicked and said, "Children shouldn't play too many games." Roger smiled faintly. "That's a rather outdated view, Grandma. Games can also reflect a person's intelligence. Besides, people who only know how to memorize textbooks and never apply knowledge in practice tend to have one-track minds." He turned to Justin. "Isn't Justin himself someone who excels in every field? I'm sure Pete is the same. Let him play." The way he spoke made it sound as though anyone who was bad at games was stupid. The corners of Justin's lips curled upward when he heard this. Wasn't that game Fatty mentioned the exact one Cherry live-streamed herself playing? He had discovered long ago that Cherry was the top-ranked player on the local server. On the other side, Fatty had already taken out his phone. He asked arrogantly, "Do you have an account? Come on, let's play around. I can carry you as long as you're not particularly stupid. This game is the best at showing whether someone is smart or not." Chapter 187. Cherry? Were they asking her whether she had ever played the game before? "Kiddo, are you sure you aren't joking?" she thought. She glanced down at the phone in her hands. It belonged to her brother. To prevent anyone from discovering that they had switched places, the siblings always swapped phones as well. To play her game, she had prepared 2 phones in advance. The one she brought with her today was her brother's, so the game wasn't installed on it yet. She said, "Gimme a moment, I need to download the game first." Fatty nodded. "Okay, hurry up." Cherry nodded back and stretched out her chubby little finger, tapping the screen deftly a few times before starting the download. On the other side, Chester panicked. After all, he was on his little nephew's side. He hurried over and said, "What are you guys playing?" "I'll carry you." Fatty knew that this uncle of his was excellent at games and even live-streamed them. If Chester carried them, it definitely wouldn't highlight Pete's incompetence. His eyes darted around before he grinned and said, "Pete has never played this game before, so he'll definitely struggle to get started. Why don't we do a PvP battle first? That way, he can also familiarize himself with the controls." PvP referred to one-on-one, player versus player combat. Once a player's HP dropped to 0, their character would die. Fatty was certain Pete wouldn't be familiar with the game since it was his first time playing. Wouldn't that make it easy for him to crush his opponent and rack up several kills? If he managed a kill ratio of 0 to dozens, his dad and grandpa would definitely praise him. He could also take the opportunity to show everyone that he, Fatty, was the most outstanding child of this generation of the Hunts family. Chester was usually a bit slow, but even he instantly understood the 7- or 8-year-old boy's intentions. "No, that won't do," he said anxiously. "Why not?" Fatty asked. Chester coughed. "Who starts with a PvP battle right away? That's obviously unfair to Pete." Fatty argued, "It's not unfair at all. This way, we can see Pete's real level. Or are you scared to have a PvP match with me, Pete?" Cherry, who was still downloading the game, looked up with her big, round eyes. She blinked and replied sweetly, "Sure, no problem." Her young, tender voice was so soft it could melt hearts. Mrs. Hunt felt as though someone had poured honey directly into her heart. She waved Cherry over and said, "If you don't want to play, then don't. Come over to Great-Grandma instead." Cherry tilted her head and looked at her. Seeing the elderly woman's gentle gaze, she smiled and replied, "It's okay, Great-Grandma." Mrs. Hunt shook her head earnestly. "It's not good to immerse yourself in games. Look at Chester, weren't all of you against him playing games back then?" Raymond laughed. "It's not like Fatty is playing professionally. He's cultivating his mind and spirit. Besides, I've heard games can train a child's focus, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. Clever children always master everything quickly, no matter what they do." Roger smiled as well. "Don't worry, Grandma. Pete has been smart since he was little. He has a very high IQ. A bit of gaming won't be a problem for him." Then Roger turned to Fatty. "Show your younger cousin some mercy." Fatty grinned. "No problem, Daddy." Seeing his confidence, Roger suddenly said, "It doesn't seem appropriate to just play games casually. Why don't we make a bet?" Raymond immediately supported the idea. "That's a great idea. Otherwise, the kids won't be motivated to win. How about this, if Fatty loses, I'll give up 1% of my shares in the company. What do you say?" 1%? That was going way too far. The Hunts' assets were worth trillions. Even though Raymond only held 20% of the shares, 1% of that stake was still worth several $1,000,000. Mrs. Hunt's expression darkened. "The children are just playing around. The stakes are too high, Raymond. What's the big deal?" Raymond walked over and held Mrs. Hunt's arm with a grin. Despite being in his 50s, he behaved shamelessly. "We're just having fun, Mom. Besides, we're family. It doesn't matter who owns the shares in the end. I'm sure Justin will rise to the challenge, right?" Justin lowered his gaze. "Are you talking about 1% of the company's shares, or 1% of your shares, Uncle Raymond?" Raymond froze. Justin sneered. "Since you want to play, let's raise the stakes. How about 1% of the entire company's shares? 1% of the Hunt Corporation meant billions in profit transfers. The stakes were astronomical. Who would gamble tens of billions on a single bet?" Raymond's face darkened as he subconsciously looked at Roger. Roger smiled. "Since Justin said so, let's go with that." Raymond was about to protest, but Roger tugged on his sleeve and whispered, "Justin raised the stakes because he thinks you won't dare to accept it. He's using psychological warfare." Raymond immediately understood. So that was Justin's trick. He sneered coldly and exchanged a glance with Roger before whispering, "Are you sure Pete has never played this game before?" Roger nodded. "He studies every day. How would he have time for games? He only downloaded it once in California and played for one afternoon before uninstalling it. He definitely can't play." Raymond looked at his grandson again. Fatty was 7 or 8 years old and highly skilled at games. The Hunts were all intelligent. How hard could it be for Fatty to bully a 5-year-old? No matter how smart a child was, they still needed time to familiarize themselves with the game's mechanics. That short adjustment period alone meant Fatty's victory was practically guaranteed. Raymond smiled broadly. "Fine, Justin. I'll bet 1% of the company's shares. What about you?" Justin was about to answer when Raymond suddenly added, "You're the head of the Hunt Corporation, so I can't ask for your shares. How about this, if Fatty wins, you give me the ring Mom just gave Pete. That's not too much to ask, right?" On the surface, trading billions in shares for a ring worth millions seemed unfair to Raymond. But money could always be earned again. That ring was priceless. More importantly, it symbolized the future wife of the Hunt family's next head. Raymond had calculated everything perfectly. Mrs. Hunt exploded in anger. "How can you gamble like this when the children are just playing games? That ring was my gift. How can it be transferred to someone else?" Raymond looked at her calmly. "Why are you being biased, Mom? You didn't say anything when I offered shares worth billions. Or is it because Justin doesn't dare to accept my bet? Chapter 188. Many people, most of them collateral and direct descendants of the Hunts, had come for the family dinner. By repeatedly using phrases like, "Do you dare or not?" in front of so many people, Raymond was clearly leaving Justin with no way out. If Justin refused the bet at a moment like this, it would be tantamount to admitting cowardice. Raymond was certain Justin would agree. After all, that was his only option. Sure enough, after a brief silence, Justin slowly replied, "Let's do it." Raymond and Roger exchanged a look and smirked. How dare Pete even attend the family dinner? And Mrs. Hunt was far too biased. Pete was just a 5-year-old who hadn't even grown up yet, and she was already giving him the family heirloom. It was outrageous. They were determined to make Pete humiliate himself today. Mrs. Hunt tried to stop them again, but Justin shot her a reassuring look, causing the old lady to reluctantly stay silent. Fatty became even more excited after hearing their agreement. He chose the hero he was most skilled with and asked Cherry, "Which hero are you using, Pete?" "Just pick any one." Cherry nodded, selected the little girl hero she always played, and replied, "I'm choosing this one." "What about you?" "I'm using this guy." Fatty answered. "Pfft." Cherry burst into laughter. The moment the match began, she slipped into her irritable little girl persona and immediately started trash-talking. "Alright then, come on, Sonny. I'm gonna beat you so badly today your mom won't even recognize you." Fatty froze. "Who are you calling Sonny?" "Your hero, of course. Isn't he my hero's son?" Having been insulted for no reason at all, Fatty was furious. He immediately controlled his hero and charged straight at Cherry. Cherry looked spirited and confident, a triumphant glint flashing across her face. She deliberately pretended it was her first time playing, making her hero stumble left and right clumsily, as though she had no idea how the controls worked. "Oh no, why is she walking away?" Cherry cried out. Fatty was overjoyed. He chased after her hero and began attacking. Cherry didn't fight back during the early stages. Instead, she intentionally made her character sway awkwardly, causing Fatty to burst into laughter. "Dummy Pete, you're so stupid. Can't you even walk properly? I'm gonna teach you a lesson today." She continued to feign incompetence, refusing to fire a single shot while carefully controlling her HP, allowing Fatty to whittle it down to nearly nothing. Then, as if she had suddenly realized something, she acted panicked and began fleeing toward her defensive tower. Fatty chased after her relentlessly. She was nearly out of HP. As long as he landed one hit, victory would be guaranteed. Even tanking the defensive tower wouldn't be an issue. Yet, at that very moment, Cherry seemed to accidentally press the wrong button. Her hero suddenly performed a roll to the side, dodging Fatty's attack completely. Immediately after, a kill notification rang out. Pete Hunt has killed the unbeatable and most handsome. He lost that fast. Raymond laughed triumphantly. "You're too lousy, Pete. Even if it's your first time playing, you still lost ridiculously fast. It hasn't even been a minute." Roger smirked as well. "A bet is a bet, Justin. That ring." Justin glanced at them, a cold glint flickering in his eyes. In front of everyone, his lips slowly parted. "The children were just fooling around. Are you certain the bet we made is valid?" Raymond chuckled. "You can't go back on your word, Justin. You're a man, aren't you? And you're the one running the Hunt Corporation. You must keep your word, you can't renege." Justin raised his brows slightly. "Are you sure, Uncle Raymond?" "Yes," Raymond answered firmly. Justin sighed lightly. "In that case, I'll gladly accept 1% of the company's shares from you." He turned to Sean, who stood behind him, and instructed calmly, "Prepare the share transfer agreement. Uncle Raymond will sign it later." "Yes, sir." Raymond froze. Roger, equally stunned, blurted out, "You should be giving us the ring, Justin. After all, Fatty was the one who won just now. He stopped mid-sentence, suddenly realizing something. His gaze snapped toward the children. Fatty's phone screen had already dimmed. Fatty himself stood there dumbfounded. What had just happened? When he looked up, he saw Cherry patting her little chest, sighing in relief. Phew, that was really close. Only then did Fatty understand, he had been unlucky just now. He had been so close to killing her hero. Again, he shouted angrily. That doesn't seem very good, Cherry replied hesitantly. Fatty panicked. What's wrong with it? Cherry sighed. The stakes aren't good. I already won, so I'm not playing anymore. Fatty. Furious, he rushed over to Roger. Daddy. Let's bet again. Grandpa, put up another 1%. Another 1% meant billions of dollars. Raymond, who was still reeling from the massive loss, panicked. No, no, no. Just then, Fatty turned around and saw Cherry making faces at him. She even pretended to look shaken as she said, Pete was really scared just now, Daddy. I don't even know what happened. How did Fatty die like that? I only had a sliver of HP left. Justin. What was one supposed to do when their daughter suddenly decided to put on a performance? Naturally, play along. Justin reached out, ruffled her hair, and said with a doting smile, Pete is amazing. You actually won 1% of the company's shares for Daddy. And this was your first time playing. You're incredible. Cherry grinned proudly. Raymond's face flushed bright red. Like a gambler driven mad by loss, losing billions made him restless and agitated. He turned to Fatty and asked, Are you sure you can beat him if you try again? Fatty nodded vigorously. Yes. I was so close just now. All right. Raymond said through gritted teeth. Grandpa will trust you one more time. He turned to Justin. One more round. Cherry buried her face into Justin's shoulder. Pete doesn't want to, Daddy. It's too scary. Pete is scared. Justin. He gently patted her head. All right. We won't play anymore. But the more Justin refused, the more determined Raymond became. He snapped, What? Are you backing out after winning, Justin? That's not how this works. Raymond stood up, eyes bloodshot, glaring at him. This bet only involves a few $1 billion. I'm risking billions, while you're only putting up Mom's ring. Don't tell me you're scared to bet. Forced into a corner, Justin could only pat Cherry's shoulder and say softly, Let's play one more round, Pete. But Daddy, I'm scared. Don't be scared. Just close your eyes and press randomly. Cherry looked up at him with a timid expression and sighed. Sigh. I thought you said gambling wasn't good, Daddy. Alright then, I'll play. Chapter 189. Left with no other option, Cherry sat in front of Fatty with her cell phone and turned on the game again. Fatty controlled his hero and rushed straight toward Cherry's hero. The two of them clashed in the middle of the arena. Cherry blinked and repeated the same trick. After allowing Fatty to reduce her HP to the barest minimum, she coincidentally killed Fatty's hero again. Fatty jumped to his feet. Why am I dead again? Cherry blinked her big, round eyes. Yeah, I didn't do anything either. How did I fire a cannon? Oh, I get it now. Fatty? Cherry said with a straight face, It's because your mom will always be your mom. Sons can't just usurp the throne whenever they want. Fatty. Her words made Roger narrow his eyes slightly. By the time Fatty rushed over to demand another round, Raymond had already become thoroughly anxious and irritable from his losses. Within just a few minutes, he had actually lost 2% of the company's shares, going from owning 20% to 18%. Raymond was so furious that he slammed the table. One more time. Fatty nodded. He was just about to charge forward when Roger grabbed his arm. Then he looked at Justin and Cherry with a smile and said, Nice one, Justin. Justin raised his eyebrows. I told you there was no need to raise the stakes when the children are just fooling around. Look at how alarmed and anxious Uncle Raymond has become after losing. His words made Raymond's face turn as red as a tomato. He pointed at Justin angrily and sputtered, You. Justin's expression turned cold, and he said nothing. Cherry, however, said innocently, Daddy, I'm so scared. Is that Grandpa having a stroke? His fingers keep shaking. Raymond? Even Justin couldn't help but smile. His anger vanished, and his voice turned low and gentle as he said, No, Uncle Raymond is just being a sore loser. Forget it. You don't need to prepare the agreement anymore, Sean. Raymond knew Justin was provoking him the moment he heard that. Either he swallowed his pride and went along with Justin's words, becoming the sore loser who proposed the bet and backed out, or he handed over the shares. Raymond was thick-skinned. Thinking he could recover his reputation later, he was about to speak when that same young, tender voice rang out again. Why would he be a sore loser, Daddy? That Grandpa was amazing just now. He even asked if you dared to bet with him. Is he the one who doesn't dare now? Also, can people cancel bets whenever they want? Daddy taught me that people should always keep their word. Otherwise, it's no different from a fart. Raymond. The humiliation hit him square in the face. His words were no different from a fart. He took several deep breaths. He couldn't bear to part with the money, but backing out would humiliate him even more. The rage churned in his chest. At that moment, Roger smiled and said, That's impossible. It's just a few billion. Dad, give it to him. Raymond looked at Roger in disbelief. Roger. Roger's expression darkened. Give it to him. Raymond finally turned to Justin and said indignantly, Prepare the agreement. Sean immediately nodded. Yes, sir. As Sean turned to leave, Raymond sneered, Your assistant is terrible, Justin. How can he move without you even agreeing? Sean ignored him and quickened his steps toward the exit, already preparing to print the documents. To be honest, 2% of the shares was extremely important to them. Justin, however, replied calmly, We're family, Uncle Raymond. How could he possibly dare to disobey your instructions? Raymond? Was there anyone who didn't know that no one could command Justin's subordinates except Justin himself? That was going too far. Meanwhile, while Cherry was provoking Raymond and his family at the Hunt's residence, Pete was at school. During class, a child raised his hand. Ms. Lynn, my head hurts. The teacher hurried over. What's wrong? The boy pointed at his head. It hurts. Ms. Lynn had no choice but to let him rest by the side. After class, several children surrounded him. Jimmy, are you pretending to have a headache? Jimmy shook his head. No, I'm not. But my mom said you're pretending so you can skip school. Jimmy's eyes reddened as he stood up. That's not true. My head really hurts. You're lying. Yeah, you're pretending. Your mom said so in the kindergarten parents group chat. Jimmy clenched his fists in anger. Mia walked over and said softly, Don't say that about Jimmy. I'm sure he's not pretending. Her voice was gentle and calming. Pete liked the way she spoke, which was why she was the only child he willingly played with. Seeing her defend Jimmy, Pete glanced at him and sent a message to Nora. Mommy, a classmate keeps having headaches. What's going on? Parents group chat. Jimmy's mother was complaining non-stop. Jimmy's mom. The teacher called again saying Jimmy has a headache. Kids are really sly these days. Since I picked him up immediately last time, he's learned to lie. Brandon's mom. If it keeps happening, you should probably take him for a checkup. Jimmy's mom. Is that really necessary? They'll just make him do CT scans and MRIs. That's radiation. Helen's mom. Kids these days are too smart. They know how to pretend. The flood of messages woke Nora up. She glanced at them, then replied to Pete. After seeing her response, Pete video called her and followed her instructions to examine Jimmy. He pressed the top of Jimmy's head. "Does it hurt here?" After several questions, Nora's lazy voice came through. "I'm hanging up." Then she sent a message to the group chat. "Nora. Jimmy's mom, his condition isn't good. Take him to the hospital immediately for a lumbar puncture." The group chat fell dead silent. A moment later. "Jimmy's mom. Jimmy's mom. Are you insane? At most he needs a brain CT. Why a lumbar puncture? Nora. I am a doctor. Jimmy's mom. So what if you're a doctor? We actually have doctors in this group. Golden Sunshine Kindergarten has parents like you. Are you so broke you need to cheat me out of medical fees?" Others chimed in. "She's right. Hospitals just want money. Trying to scam parents? Probably a quack doctor. What does a lumbar puncture have to do with the brain? Jimmy's mom. This is a quack doctor's misdiagnosis. Get out of the group." Chapter 190, Revised and Corrected. Nora, who had encountered family members of patients far more unreasonable than this, wasn't bothered. Instead, she typed, "Jimmy is likely suffering from encephalitis." She was about to send the message when a system notification suddenly popped up. "You have been removed from the group chat by the administrator." Nora. She raised her eyebrows and stared at her phone for a moment. Shortly after, she scoffed, opened Cherry's chat window, and sent Pete a message. "He is likely suffering from encephalitis. Have his father take him to the hospital for a checkup. Doctors should be benevolent." The child was still too young. She didn't want the matter to be ignored. Nor would she lower herself to the parents' level. After sending the message, she lay down and went back to sleep. At the kindergarten. After reading Nora's message, Pete walked over to Jimmy and relayed her words. Jimmy was so frightened that he burst into tears immediately. Sob. "I have encephalitis. Am I going to die?" Ms. Lin was dumbfounded when Jimmy suddenly started crying. She tried to comfort him, but he only cried harder and demanded to see his mother. Left with no choice, Ms. Lin called Jimmy's mother. Jimmy's mother was a hot-tempered and straightforward woman. After receiving the call, she rushed to the kindergarten without hesitation. She immediately spotted Jimmy, who was crying so hard that he could barely breathe. Jimmy's mother panicked. "What's wrong? Did someone bully you?" Through sobs, Jimmy replied, "Mommy, I'm dying. I have a very serious illness." Sob. His mother frowned. "Who told you that?" "Cherry did." Jimmy's mother exploded with rage. She shouted at Ms. Lin, "Who is Cherry?" Ms. Lin tried to stop her, but Jimmy's mother, tall and heavily built, was far too strong. She shoved Ms. Lin aside, stormed into the classroom, and barked, "Where is Cherry?" Pete slowly stood up, frowning. The moment Jimmy's mother saw him, she launched into a tirade. "Why would you say such nonsense to Jimmy? Don't you know it's wrong to scare children? Apologize to Jimmy right now." Jimmy clutched his mother's hand. The 5-year-old boy looked confused, clearly unsure of what was happening. He tugged on her hand and said, "Mommy, Cherry wasn't trying to scare me. My head hurts. I really am sick." "What do you mean you're sick?" Jimmy's mother's expression hardened. "It's normal for kids to have headaches and fevers. Besides, your head stops hurting every time you get home. Our whole family is healthy. What kind of illness could you possibly have? What kind of bullshit are you talking about?" It wasn't that Jimmy's mother didn't care about her son. It was just that every time she brought him home during the previous incidents, his headache would mysteriously disappear before they even reached the hospital. After this happened several times, it was only natural for her to suspect that Jimmy was faking it. Otherwise, why would his head only hurt at kindergarten and never at home? Jimmy's mother pointed at Pete and sneered. "Fine, you're just a kid. I won't stoop to your level. I'll deal with your mother instead." She turned to Ms. Lin and said, Call Cherry's mother here right now. Otherwise, I won't let this go today. How could I allow my little Jimmy to be bullied at school? Ms. Lin finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although Jimmy's mother was ill-tempered, she was still reasonable and hadn't laid a hand on the child. She was far more decent than Whitney Lowe. Ms. Lin immediately called Nora. Pete returned to his seat while Jimmy's mother waited with her son in Ms. Lin's office. Beside him, Mia was extremely nervous. She tugged at Pete's sleeve and whispered, "Cherry, I heard Jimmy's parents are big shots in the underworld. Anyone who offends Jimmy will be." She raised her hand, dragged it across her neck, and added, "Killed secretly." "Pete?" Mia shrank back in fear. "My mommy told me not to offend Jimmy when I first came to school." Jimmy's mom looked so scary just now. The other children whispered among themselves. "Will Cherry still come to school tomorrow? I heard Jimmy's dad has a huge pet tiger that eats children. Will Cherry be eaten on the way home? You mustn't die, Cherry." Sob. "Cherry, I really like you." Children's worlds were simple and innocent, especially since Cherry had already become their favorite person in class. As a result, Pete was surrounded by teary-eyed classmates saying their goodbyes. "Cherry, I like you the most. You have to come to school alive tomorrow, okay? Cherry, why don't you buy some meat after school? If you meet the tiger, you can feed it so it won't eat you. Cherry, take this. It's a little hammer my mommy gave me. She said I can hit anyone who bullies me. You can use it to beat the tiger." Pete. He rolled his eyes helplessly. These kids were unbelievably silly, and unbelievably adorable. The loneliness buried deep in his heart since birth seemed to quietly fade during his days at kindergarten. Mia grew even more anxious, her eyes reddening. "Why don't I ask Daddy to send you home today?" To her, her father was the strongest person in the world. "No, it's fine," Pete replied. When an irritated Nora rushed to the kindergarten after being woken up, the first thing she saw was her son being tearfully surrounded and bid farewell by a crowd of children. "Nora!" Before she could say anything, Jimmy's mother charged toward her, jabbing a finger in her face. "Never mind the bullshit you were spouting in the group chat, how dare you say that kind of nonsense to a child? Look at how pale Jimmy has become because of you." Jimmy stood behind his mother, trembling from head to toe, crying so hard that he looked on the verge of collapsing. Nora frowned. "Now isn't the time to argue. I suggest you take your son to the hospital immediately." "To hell with the hospital!" Jimmy's mother shouted. "We're face to face now and you're still full of hot air. It's all because your daughter scared him that my son ended up like this. Encephalitis? A lumbar puncture? I've never heard such bullshit in my life. Aren't lumbar punctures for leukemia or something? Do you even know what the hell you're talking about?" "Nora!" Jimmy's mother rolled up her sleeves, clearly ready to hit someone. "Apologize to my son right now. Make your daughter apologize too. Take back everything you said and tell him it was all a joke." At that exact moment, Jimmy suddenly clutched his head and vomited. Chapter 191. Jimmy's mother was utterly shocked. She quickly bent down and picked Jimmy up. "What's wrong? Jimmy, what's wrong?" After throwing up twice, Jimmy finally stopped. Covered in sweat, he frowned and asked, "Mommy, am I dying?" Jimmy's mother finally panicked. "Of course not. Mommy's here, baby. Mommy will take you to the hospital right away." She carried him in her arms and hurried out. As she passed by Nora, Nora said once more, "Have a lumbar puncture done immediately and check whether it's encephalitis once you reach the hospital." This time, Jimmy's mother merely looked at her and said nothing before striding away. After she left, Nora checked the time. School hadn't ended yet. She left Pete at the kindergarten and went home on her own. Ms. Lin. She had thought that Cherry's mother would comfort Cherry a little before leaving. After all, she had just quarreled with a classmate's parent. But why did she seem so indifferent? No, that wasn't right. Cherry's mother was a very good mother. She must be extremely busy with work and had rushed over the moment she received the call. She was probably rushing back to work now to earn money to raise Cherry. Yes, that must be it. With that thought in mind, Ms. Lin returned to the classroom, only to see Cherry completely engrossed in a book. Ms. Lin couldn't help walking over. She gently ruffled Cherry's hair and said, "Don't be scared, Cherry." Pete stiffened slightly, but forced himself to tolerate the contact. He realized that there seemed to be more and more people these days whose physical contact he could accept. Soon, school ended. One after another, the children said goodbye to Pete, who left the school with Tanya. Mia watched them get into the large black car before unhappily getting into the Smith's car herself. Seeing her expression, Joel couldn't help asking, "What's wrong, Mia?" Mia asked timidly, "Daddy, will Cherry be eaten by the big tiger?" Joel. Mia told him everything that had happened earlier that day. Joel ruffled her hair and said, "It's fine. The big tiger won't dare eat him." Mia's eyes widened in confusion. "Why?" "The big tiger doesn't dare eat me because I have Daddy, but he doesn't." Joel lowered his gaze and replied, "His father is Justin Hunt. Don't worry, the big tiger won't dare eat him at all." Mia immediately felt relieved. "That's great." Joel, however, turned to look outside. Tanya had picked the child up again. Did this mean the child's mother hadn't even bothered to come and fetch him from school? His gaze lingered on Tanya. Yet what occupied his thoughts was the DNA test report. The results were too complicated. Even now, he didn't dare bring it up to Ian. He needed to carefully think about how to word it. Jimmy's mother soon arrived at the hospital and rushed straight to the pediatric department with Jimmy. By then, Jimmy was already feeling much better. Nevertheless, the pediatrician still conducted a series of tests before explaining the reason for his vomiting. It was most likely caused by excessive crying due to fright. "Jimmy, do you still feel like throwing up?" Jimmy shook his head. The doctor smiled. "There's no need to make such a big fuss over something trivial." Relieved, Jimmy's mother nodded. The doctor then added, "Still, it's better to be cautious. Let's run a few more tests." Jimmy's mother instructed the nanny to pay the medical fees before calling Jimmy's father. Jimmy's father was named Jordan Hoffman. He was involved in underground businesses in New York and was considered a major figure in that field. Apart from the Smiths and the Hunts, he showed courtesy to almost no one. He was crude and burly, standing about 6 feet 1 inch tall and weighing around 205 pounds. At the moment, he was working out, his muscles bulging powerfully as the gym equipment moved. When his phone rang, he answered loudly, "What's the matter, dear?" Jimmy's mother wiped her tears and snapped, "What's the matter?" "Someone bullied your son Jimmy at kindergarten." F***CK. Jordan stood up abruptly, causing the gym equipment to clang loudly. "Who the hell dares bully my son?" "But did you say Jimmy had to go to the hospital because of it? Why is he such a wimp?" Jimmy's mother choked briefly before yelling, "What would my son know when he's only 5? A kid in his class told him he had encephalitis and scared him so badly that he cried for 2 hours until he threw up. What are you going to do about it?" Jordan roared, "Whose damn kid is that bold? How dare they insult my son? I'll tear that little bastard to pieces." Jimmy's mother immediately grew anxious. "Who are you planning to tear to pieces? How can you blame a child who hasn't even grown up yet?" "The one I'm furious at is his mother. The kindergarten made her come over, yet she still told me to get a lumbar puncture done for Jimmy. That's a lumbar puncture, you know. It's extremely painful. Who the hell does she think she is? Does she think she can just scare people like that?" Jordan nodded. "You're right. I'll have someone check her background immediately." Jimmy's mother nodded. "I'll also pressure the kindergarten. Why should they allow parents like that to send their children there? Make them withdraw voluntarily, or I'll force them out." "All right. Whatever you say, dear. How's Jimmy feeling now?" At the mention of Jimmy, her tone softened. "He's much better. He only threw up because he cried too hard from fear." "I'm furious. What kind of parent spreads such rumors? Is it fun to scare children? If Jimmy hadn't suddenly vomited, given my temper, I would have slapped her a few times already. I'll check who her husband is and slap him instead. What's the child's name? Cherry Smith. Got it. Even after hanging up, Jimmy's mother was still furious. She frantically contacted the principal and teachers and sent them a message. Jimmy's mother. Since Cherry Smith's mother, Nora Smith, refuses to apologize for her child's actions, I strongly suggest that the school expel her child. I won't reconsider unless they apologize sincerely. When Ms. Lynn saw the message, she immediately contacted Nora. Ms. Smith, I understand that Cherry didn't mean to scare Jimmy. Why don't you have her apologize? Nora, who had been woken up repeatedly by phone calls, was already extremely impatient. She replied bluntly, Pete. I mean Cherry will be taking 3 days off from school. Jimmy's condition was extremely serious. If his mother still refused to follow instructions and take him for proper tests, 3 days would be more than enough for the illness to worsen. Ms. Lynn. At the hospital. It was only after receiving news from Ms. Lynn that Cherry would temporarily stop attending school that Jimmy's mother finally calmed down. After Jimmy completed all the examinations, his mother looked at him again and suddenly recalled his earlier complaints. She asked, Does your head still hurt, Jimmy? Chapter 192. Jimmy thought for a while. His head still hurt a little, but when he recalled the discomfort he had felt earlier, when they had checked his stomach to find out why he had thrown up, his mind went blank for a moment. Then he shook his head and replied, It doesn't hurt anymore, Mommy. Jimmy's mother immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The woman, who had been quite flustered deep down just moments ago, finally put her heart at ease. She said, It's fine as long as it doesn't hurt anymore. Your classmate's mother doesn't seem like a good person. I bet she doesn't even have a doctor's license, yet she kept spouting nonsense. Serves them right that her child can't attend classes at school anymore. After saying that, she bent down, picked up Jimmy, and went home. In a gym somewhere. Jordan found all of Cherry's information in no time. He frowned as he stared at Nora's name in the section listing the child's mother and asked his subordinate, Doesn't she have a father? I don't hit women. The man replied, No, she doesn't. Jordan fell silent for a moment. Then he let out a cold snort and said, People who can send their kids to that kindergarten aren't from ordinary families either. Find out which family they belong to. If they're just ordinary people, then tell my wife to drop it, lest they say we're using our power to bully them. Okay. After his subordinate left, someone walked in and said, Mr. Hoffman, that Anderson kid is here again. Jordan's expression instantly turned cold. He actually has the guts to come again. TSK. Let him in. At the door. A limping Logan stood there with his eyes downcast. The dark basement was dim and messy. The young man, with an untamed look on his face, stuck out like a sore thumb in the noisy environment. He waited until someone summoned him before finally stepping forward and limping into the room. As soon as he entered, Logan lowered his head and said, Mr. Hoffman. Jordan let out an icy snort. Our sportsbook isn't a joke. Logan kept his eyes down. Their car races weren't actual competitions. The bets and gambling were all underground transactions. The car racing sportsbook operated solely under Jordan's name as a guarantee. All the money Logan had earned over the years had come from them. He had always been the top car racer in New York. Whenever the wealthy wanted to bet on car racing, a great number of them placed their bets there. Logan shifted his weak, injured foot and said, The next race is in 3 days, but I'm afraid my foot won't recover in time. What does that have to do with me? Jordan got off the gym equipment and walked over. He picked up a bottle of iced water, unscrewed the cap, and gulped it down in one breath. Logan shifted his foot again. I'll definitely lose if I participate in the race. I'm sure the players will feel very strongly about this, so I'd like to ask Mr. Hoffman for help in postponing the race for a month, so I can undergo surgery and recover. Jordan sneered. As they say, it takes 100 days for bone fractures and muscle tears to heal. Are you sure you'll be fine in just a month? Yes, I am. Logan gritted his teeth. Even if I'm not, I can still participate in the race. Jordan said coldly, you should have known from the moment you entered our sports book that no one can change their bets. For racers like you, your bodies are also a form of gambling, yet you still had the audacity to get yourself injured? You lost the last race, didn't you? I heard you even sold your sports car. Are the Andersons really unable to fork out that money? Logan said stubbornly, I'll take responsibility for my own actions. The Andersons and I are separate entities. Jordan stood up. Good. I admire young men like you. All right, Jordan, we'll help you this once and personally speak to the players. I'm sure they'll relent out of respect for me. Logan breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you. He had only managed to pay off the massive losses from the previous race by selling his sports car. If he lost again, the bookies who had once seen potential in him, and the people who had placed bets worth millions on him, would probably kill him. Just then, someone suddenly stepped forward and said, I found the information, Mr. Hoffman. The man handed his phone to Jordan, with Nora's profile displayed on the screen. Jordan's eyes widened when he saw the word Anderson. He let out a cold laugh and handed the phone back. Then he suddenly turned on Logan and said, I take back my words. Logan, who was about to leave, froze. His eyes widened abruptly as he turned back. Everyone in the underworld feared Jordan. They found him crude and unreasonable, but after interacting with him for some time, Logan felt that he was actually a righteous and loyal man, just extremely protective of his own people. He was only unreasonable when those he considered his own were involved. That was why Logan had come to beg him for help. He asked hesitantly, Mr. Hoffman. Jordan asked, how is Nora Smith related to you? Logan clenched his jaw and replied, she's my cousin. Oh. Jordan said bluntly, she offended me. More precisely, her daughter bullied my son. So I won't be helping you anymore. Logan was stunned. He wanted to say something, but Jordan waved his hand and ordered, get out. Several of Jordan's men immediately walked toward Logan. Helping him would have been a favor, not an obligation. Logan didn't fall out with him over the sudden change. Instead, he nodded, turned around, and walked out on his own without needing anyone to escort him. When he reached the door, he heard Jordan say slowly behind him, don't hold it against me. They scared my son so badly that he threw up. I have to vent my anger somewhere. If I don't vent it on you, then that woman, Nora Smith, would have to suffer my wrath instead. Of course, you can choose to let my wife beat her up to vent her anger, or you can accept this outcome. Logan clenched his fists tightly. Jordan looked at the investigation report and continued, judging from my findings, you're probably not that close to her anyway. You're in a miserable situation right now. If you lose the upcoming race, not only will you lose everything you have, but the bookies who suffer huge losses won't let you off either. By my calculations, unless you come up with $50 million to pay them back, you won't be able to calm them down. The Andersons probably can't afford a debt like that. Logan immediately said, I told you, Mr. Hoffman, the Andersons and I are separate entities. Jordan casually sat down. His muscles twitched slightly as he said in a rough voice, that may work on me, but do you think it'll work on others when your last name is Anderson? Logan frowned deeply. Gambling in the underworld didn't follow normal rules. Jordan continued, do you remember that black market boxing champion from 3 years ago? He disappeared after losing a match. Do you know where he is now? He died after being secretly beaten to death. His body was dumped into the sewer and eaten by rats. And those people even went after his family. It's said his wife and children are still begging on the streets. Logan clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. Jordan smiled faintly. Of course, none of this will happen if you can heal your foot within 3 days, or if you can find a racer more skilled than you to win the race for you. But that kind of racer doesn't exist in the States. Internationally, only Yancy fits the bill. While the two were speaking, Jimmy's mother arrived with Jimmy. The moment they entered the gym, the hot, stuffy air made Jimmy's head ache violently, as if massive tidal waves were crashing inside his skull. Chapter 193. Jimmy instantly turned as pale as a sheet. He clutched his head, then his chest. His mother noticed his abnormal behavior immediately. "What's wrong, Jimmy?" The little boy couldn't pinpoint where exactly he felt unwell, so he could only say, "I feel so sick, Mommy." Jimmy's mother hurriedly hugged him. She couldn't help but complain, "It's all Nora Smith's fault. Of all things to say, why did she have to scare you like that?" She was so anxious that her eyes were red. Turning to Jordan, she complained, "I really don't know who this boy takes after, to be this timid. Come on, Mommy will tuck you into bed." She scooped the pale Jimmy into her arms and carried him upstairs to the bedroom. Seeing how badly little Jimmy looked only made Jordan even more furious. He looked at Logan and said, "It all comes down to this. Either I help you, everyone will take a step back on my account and postpone the race for a month, but you must bring me that woman, Nora Smith, and let me teach her a proper lesson. Or you get the hell out of here." Logan clenched his fists. He stared at Jordan. After a brief silence, he finally replied coldly, "I'll take my leave, Mr. Hoffman." Logan limped out the door. Jordan was still seething even after he left. The man beside him said cautiously, "Mr. Hoffman, that kid is actually quite righteous and honorable." Jordan snorted. Then he can only blame his bad luck for having a cousin like that. "Since I can't make trouble for that woman, I'll just make trouble for him instead." After saying that, however, he lowered his head and added, "Forget it. That kid is interesting. Pass the word, the race 3 days from now will proceed as scheduled, but he and the Andersons are separate entities." This meant that he was protecting the Andersons. The man nodded. "Yes, sir." To be honest, Jordan wasn't the strongest among the underworld forces. However, everyone trusted him because he was righteous, loyal, and principled in how he handled things. Take what just happened, for example. Even though he vented his anger on Logan because of a woman, he still protected Logan's family. Otherwise, if everyone turned their attention to the Andersons, they would be completely finished. After leaving Jordan's place, Logan took only a few steps before someone called out to him from behind. He turned around and saw Jordan's second-in-command approaching. The man strode over and said, "Mr. Hoffman has made it clear, you and the Andersons are separate entities. I really don't know what it is about you that caught his eye." Logan breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. "Please thank Mr. Hoffman for me." The second-in-command nodded, then said, "You're really unlucky, though. Why do you have to have a cousin like that? If you ask me, this whole thing could have ended if you just brought her over and made her apologize to Mr. Hoffman and his wife. Why insist on making things difficult for yourself?" Logan lowered his gaze and said nothing. The man continued, "I've already checked. Your cousin isn't from some powerful family. It wouldn't matter much to her if she embarrassed herself a little, right?" Before he could finish, Logan said calmly, "Thank you very much for your help." In other words, he had rejected the suggestion outright. The man's expression darkened. "You really don't know what's good for you, kid. She'd better either apologize or pray that the little Mr. recovers soon. Otherwise, Mr. and Mrs. Hoffman definitely won't let her off if the boy keeps being sick." Logan nodded and left. Logan's foot still hadn't recovered, so he couldn't drive. He hailed a cab and told the driver to head to the villa he was temporarily staying in. However, when he arrived, he discovered that all his belongings had been thrown outside. Someone was inside the villa, packing things up. As soon as Logan got out of the car with a frown, a voice called out, "Oh? Isn't this Logan, the racing king? You came just in time. Why haven't you moved out yet when you already sold this villa to me?" Logan pressed his lips together tightly. The man who had bought his villa was none other than Winston, John Myers' son. John had been suppressing the Andersons for years, hoping that Myers Peace Pharmacy would replace Harmonia Pharmacy as the leading traditional medicine company in New York. So when Winston heard that Logan was selling both his villa and his car, he rushed over immediately. He had bought the villa at a rock-bottom price. Located in the suburbs, the villa was worth at least $3 million. Yet Winston had only offered $1.5 million, and had even coerced Logan into the deal because Logan urgently needed cash. The contract clearly stated that Logan had 1 month to move out. Logan didn't want to return to the Anderson residence for the time being. He didn't want them to find out about his leg injury and worry about him. So why was he being kicked out now? Logan stepped forward with a dark expression and said, "Our contract clearly states that I have 1 month to move out. I only signed the sale agreement with you yesterday, didn't I?" Winston lifted his chin and replied arrogantly, "That's right, within a month. A single day is still within a month, isn't it? What, are you planning to squat here and not leave?" Logan's sharp gaze turned icy. "Don't push things too far, Winston." "Push things too far?" Winston shrugged. "How exactly am I pushing things too far? Isn't it only right that you move out once you sell me the house? Besides, I'll be living here soon anyway, so I'll just help you pack your things." As soon as he said that, someone rushed out of the villa and called, "There's a trophy here, Mr. Myers." Winston turned and saw Logan's racing championship trophy. Logan's eyes widened in shock. That trophy was from the very first race he had ever won. His parents had always opposed car racing, so he'd only celebrated quietly with friends after winning it. He had carefully kept the trophy in his villa ever since. It held immense meaning to him. He rushed forward and shouted, "Give that to me." Winston laughed and said, "Oh, this? This is the first championship trophy our Logan, the racing king, ever won. I remember he beat everyone else by copying one of Yensi's drifting techniques back then. This thing's precious. You'd better not break it. Here, Logan, hold it properly." Logan reached out. Just as he was about to take the trophy, Winston suddenly turned around and smashed it viciously against the rock beside him. Smash! The trophy shattered instantly. Logan's eyes went bloodshot. He turned on Winston, clenched his fist, and swung it at him, roaring, "You're fucking tired of living, Winston." Before he could charge forward, 2 men rushed in and restrained him. Logan had always been physically strong and rarely lost in fights. He had also been ruthless since childhood. But with 1 injured leg and no strength in it, he quickly fell into a disadvantage. The men pinned him down. Logan glared at Winston and snarled, "You're fucking shameless, kicking a man while he's down." Winston laughed loudly. "I already bought your villa. As for your car, are you selling it for $3 million or not? I've already spread the word. No one will offer you a higher price." Logan clenched his fists so tightly they trembled. At that moment, his phone suddenly rang. Chapter 194. Winston had already made up his mind to buy Logan's sports car at a dirt cheap price. There were only 20 units of that model in the entire world. One could say it was nearly impossible to get one's hands on it. The car originally retailed for $20 million. Because no one was selling it, people were now willing to pay as much as $30 million for it. Yet Winston was offering only $3 million, barely 10% of what it was actually worth. He wasn't merely kicking a man while he was down. His actions were utterly despicable and shameless. It was precisely because Winston had warned everyone in their circle beforehand that Logan still hadn't been able to sell the car. Logan was furious, but he truly needed the money. Clenching his jaw, he said, "Even if I give it away for free, I will never sell it to you. You don't know a damn thing about sports cars." Winston was only buying it to show off. How could he possibly understand anything about it? To Logan, the roar of the engine was the most beautiful sound in the world. His words amused Winston. He sneered and said, "Even $3 million is too generous for you. I'll give you 1 more minute to think about it. If you still refuse, I'll drop the price to $1.5 million. 3, 2. Before he could finish, Logan's phone rang. Logan was sitting on the ground, bruised all over, his face swollen. He spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva and answered the call. A voice came through the phone. "Logan, someone wants to buy your sports car." Logan froze. "How much are they offering?" Winston's ears perked up, and a smug smile curled on his lips. He had already arranged for several people to make offers, all lower than his. Some had even offered only $150,000. It was all done deliberately, to humiliate Logan. So Winston assumed the caller was one of his people. But the next moment, the voice on the phone said, "The buyer says that although the car retailed at $20 million and is now worth $30 million on the market, you urgently need money. He's willing to offer you $25 million. $25 million. It was more than fair." Logan let out a long breath and shouted, "Sold. All right. I'll transfer the ownership immediately." After hanging up, Logan stood up and dusted off his clothes. Despite being beaten badly, he still looked wild and untamed. He glanced at Winston, raised a finger, pointed straight at him, and said coldly, "I'll remember you." For a brief moment, Winston was intimidated by his aura. Then he sneered and snapped back to reality. "TSK. Do you think you're still Logan, the racing king? Do you really think you still matter in the underworld? What can you even do just because you remember me?" Logan didn't bother responding. He simply picked out a few personal belongings from the items thrown outside. He rarely stayed at the villa, so there wasn't much to take. He gathered a few award certificates and got into his car. He needed to complete the ownership transfer. Winston and the others stood rooted to the spot, furious and speechless. Finally, Winston snarled, "Let's go. Follow him. I want to see who the fuck dares to go against me and buy his car." At the Department of Motor Vehicles, Logan gazed at Little Yellow. After washing his hands, he gently stroked the car. He had received it as a reward for winning the championship at 17. From that moment on, the title, Logan, the Racing King, had followed him everywhere. He had cherished Little Yellow like a treasure. He had never had a girlfriend, yet he had poured all his care and affection into the car. But from this moment on, it no longer belonged to him. He looked at the buyer, Sean, and said solemnly, "I hope its new owner treats it well." Sean pushed up his glasses, nodded, and replied, "Don't worry. Mr. Hunt had bought the car for the little mister. It would be at least 10 years before the child grew up. Until then, the car would stay in the innermost section of the garage, perfectly preserved." After completing the transfer procedures, the two men walked out of the DMV, only to see Winston and a group of people approaching aggressively. Winston blocked Sean's path. "Hey! Where are you from? Didn't you receive our notice?" Sean looked at them calmly, adjusted his glasses, and said, "I did." "So?" Winston froze. He exploded in rage. "You still dared to fuck with our plans after receiving it? Do you know who's backing us?" Winston had never relied on the Myers family. The Myerses might be influential in pharmaceuticals, but in New York itself, they were nothing. The people backing him were an underworld force that even Jordan Hoffman treated with courtesy. Seeing this, Logan stepped forward anxiously. "Sir, these people aren't to be messed with. If you want to back out, I can return the money." He couldn't drag innocent people into this. Unexpectedly, Sean removed his glasses. He folded them carefully, placed them in their case, and slipped it into his pocket. "Come with me," he said calmly. Winston and the others followed him out of the DMV and into a narrow alley nearby. Logan frowned. The moment they entered the alley, Sean stopped, turned around, and beckoned them forward. Winston and his men rushed at him. Logan's heart skipped. Sean looked polite, gentle, hardly strong. Could he really handle them? The thought had barely formed when Sean suddenly threw a punch. Like swatting children aside, he struck each of them cleanly and efficiently, dropping them all to the ground in seconds. His movements were precise and disciplined, clearly trained. Winston and his men collapsed, groaning in pain. Winston shouted angrily, "Do you know who we are? How the fuck do you dare hit us?" Sean calmly took out his glasses case, wiped his lenses with a microfiber cloth, and put them back on. Then he pulled out a wet wipe, cleaned his fingers, and tossed it onto Winston's face. "I know exactly who you are," he said coldly. Winston's eyes widened. Then how the hell do you still dare touch us? Who are you? Tell us if you've got the balls. Our boss will hunt you down. Sean replied flatly, the Hunts. Logan was still in a daze when he returned home. So it had been the Hunts who helped him. No wonder they had the nerve to ignore Winston and offer $25 million. Justin Hunt had never cared about sports cars, so who had he bought it for? He entered the Andersons' villa and was about to head upstairs when he saw Nora stepping out of her room. She yawned lazily, phone in hand. A voice rang out from the phone. Mommy, I managed to buy a little yellow. Chapter 195. Logan? Little yellow? While he was wondering about it, Nora replied, oh. The voice on the phone then said, but I like pink. So I'm going to paint it pink. It's up to you. Nora only noticed Logan after she uttered those words. She was taken aback. The boy stood casually where he was, hands in his pockets. Although one couldn't tell the condition of his body at first glance, injuries were visible on his face. A bruise had formed at the corner of his mouth, and a band-aid covered his nose. They added a little more of that wild, untamed feeling to the youth. It was just that he had a somewhat hostile look in his eyes at the moment. Nora turned off the phone. She assumed the look in the boy's eyes was because she was blocking his way upstairs, so she stepped aside to give him passage. Logan limped up the stairs once she moved. As he walked past her, Nora suddenly asked, hasn't your foot healed yet? She recalled that something had already been wrong with Logan's foot the last time he came home. The boy was a car racer, both his hands and feet were equally important. Could he drive a sports car in that condition? Before she could think further, the young man glared at her fiercely, anger flashing in his eyes. It's none of your business. Nora. Logan was really mad. Even though he had bailed her out at Mr. Hoffman's, he was still just a teenager. It was inevitable that he would be resentful. He couldn't help but ask, do you know how much trouble a single sentence from you can cause? Nora. She had only just woken up and was still rather sleepy. She didn't understand what Logan meant. However, the boy didn't seem like someone who would lash out for no reason, so she asked hesitantly, what's the matter? Logan thought about the entire mess but ultimately said nothing more. He replied, it's nothing. Just mind your own affairs, and it'll be fine. He went upstairs after saying that. Nora. TSK. What a brat. He must have come back to vent his frustrations after suffering injustice outside. She went downstairs, poured herself a glass of water, and then returned upstairs with it. As soon as she got back, she received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, Mrs. Hoffman's voice came through. I'm not going to let matters rest this time, Miss Smith. Nora. Mrs. Hoffman sounded almost like she was crying. My son was so scared by what you said that he threw up again. He only fell asleep after taking a tranquilizer pill. Even though Logan has shouldered the blame for you, if anything happens to my son, I will never let you off. She hung up immediately after saying that. Nora narrowed her eyes. Logan had taken the blame for her. But what kind of blame had he shouldered for her? Now wasn't the time to think about that. The boy had thrown up again. From the looks of it, he was in terrible condition. The woman, who had never been nosy by nature, only thought about it for a moment before lying down on the bed. Yet she still felt uneasy. Pete came out of the shower a while later. After getting onto the bed, he asked hesitantly, Mommy, will Jimmy be okay? Nora was surprised. Are you on very good terms with him? Pete nodded. He likes Cherry very much. One time, I didn't manage to grab an apple during mealtime, but he had grabbed two and gave me one. Nora closed her eyes. Go to sleep now. Pete closed his eyes. 10 minutes later, Nora suddenly opened her eyes. She ruffled her hair, sat up in annoyance, and said, Pete, Jimmy isn't in good condition tonight. I'll go and check on him. Pete nodded. Nora picked up her cell phone, hacked into the Golden Sunshine Kindergarten's computer system, and found Jimmy's address. After that, she got up, changed into a set of black clothes, and left the house. As she drove the Jeep along the quiet streets, she thought she must be out of her mind. She didn't know why she was being so nosy this time. To be honest, she had already done her duty as a doctor when she had warned them repeatedly before. Besides, Jimmy's mother didn't seem easy to get along with. But Jimmy was innocent, he was only 5. It was already midnight when she arrived at the Hoffman's clubhouse. She stopped the car and tried to enter. However, someone stopped her at the door and asked, "Who are you looking for?" Nora revealed her identity. "I'm Nora. I'm here to see Jimmy's mother. Or, his father will do." The man asked her to wait while he went in to report her arrival. Soon, he came back and told her she could go in. Nora followed the few men into the gym. The room was very dark, with dim yellowish lights. Nightlife in the underworld had only just begun. Jordan was full of energy, muscles bulging on his naked upper body. He looked at Nora's tiny frame and sneered, "Huh, did Logan abandon you in the end after all?" Nora didn't understand what he was saying. "Jimmy's father, I came here to tell you that Jimmy has encephalitis. If he continues to vomit and becomes unconscious, I'm afraid he will be in great danger." "Jordan?" He sneered and stood up. "Are you crazy? You came all this way, and you're still saying that? Are you more amazing than the doctors in the hospital?" Nora shook her head. "No, that's not the case. The doctors may not know that his head hurts. Moreover, Jimmy is very young, so he can't express his symptoms clearly. I only guessed at first. That's why I told his mother to send him for a lumbar puncture. But now, I've basically confirmed the diagnosis." Jordan narrowed his eyes. Mrs. Hoffman had already come downstairs after hearing the news. Upon hearing what Nora said, she was so furious she stepped forward, fists raised. "How dare you come here? Nora Smith, are you naive or just fearless?" Nora took a step back to dodge the fists. "Calm down, Jimmy's mom. Calm down, my ass." Jimmy was crying and kicking up a fuss just now. If it weren't for the doctor prescribing tranquilizers to help him sleep, he'd be even more terrified. "He's having convulsions now because of your words. You'd better behave and let me beat you. If you duck again, I'll make sure you and Cherry won't be able to attend school anymore." Nora frowned. "It's not your call whether Cherry can attend school or not, but your son is in great danger now. You're trying to scare us again." "Fine, you claim to be a doctor, right? Which hospital are you working at? Can you show me your license?" "I didn't bring it with me." She didn't habitually carry her doctor's license. After all, she only performed 2 operations a month. Mrs. Hoffman sneered. "You didn't bring it? I bet you don't have one at all." She waved after saying that. The men around them stepped forward and surrounded Nora. "Since you have the guts to come here, I'll let you in on your feet but send you out on your back." "Nora." She balled her fists and narrowed her eyes. At that moment, hurried footsteps approached and someone shouted, "Mrs. Hoffman, something terrible has happened." Chapter 196. Mrs. Hoffman was startled to hear that. She frowned and asked, "What happened? Did he wake up in fear again?" After saying that, she didn't have the luxury of bothering with Nora anymore, so she turned around and walked out. Jordan followed closely behind the others. Jimmy was his only son, after all, so he cared deeply about him. Nora wanted to follow them up the stairs but was stopped. Someone said, "You can't go up there, Miss Smith." Nora's brows drew together, and she felt anxious. This was a matter of life and death. Nora didn't have time to care about formalities. She reached out, hooked her arm around the man's, and pulled him over forcefully. She threw him over her shoulder and slammed him onto the ground. The rest of the thugs rushed toward her one by one at the sight. Nora stretched out her leg and kicked one of them away. The man she had thrown sideways blocked the rest of the approaching thugs, allowing her to run upstairs. As she reached the upper floor, she heard Mrs. Hoffman screaming shrilly, "Jimmy! Jimmy, wake up! Wake up!" The nanny beside her also shouted anxiously, "Jimmy, Jimmy! What's wrong with him, Mrs. Hoffman?" Jordan yelled, "Get out of the way! Call 911! Hurry!" Nora's eyes widened in horror. She rushed straight to the room and saw Jimmy lying on a clean bed in the brightly lit room. He was foaming at the mouth and convulsing. Mrs. Hoffman touched his forehead and exclaimed, "Why is he so warm? Jordan, hurry and call 911. Nora rushed over anxiously. Jordan, who was on the phone, noticed her. He frowned and was about to speak when Nora bypassed him and stood at Jimmy's bed. Jordan was furious. "You!" But before he could finish, Nora ordered coldly, "Get out of the way." Mrs. Hoffman was dumbfounded. Nora grabbed her by the arm, then looked at the nanny and instructed, "Get me some diluted alcohol to lower his temperature." She immediately pulled Jimmy's eyelids up skillfully and checked his eyes. The boy's pupils were already dilating. She had no time to waste. She took out a pill from her pocket, tore off the tinfoil, and fed it to Jimmy. Mrs. Hoffman finally came back to her senses. She rushed over and shouted, "What did you feed Jimmy?" Nora looked at her coldly. "If you continue to stop me, your son will die." Her calm, steady voice and her words left Mrs. Hoffman dumbfounded. Seeing that Mrs. Hoffman finally wasn't coming forward anymore, Nora took the diluted alcohol from the nanny and physically lowered the boy's temperature. The bodyguards at the door rushed up at this point and said, "Mr. Hoffman." "Nora, she..." Before he could finish, he was stunned by the sight of Nora efficiently administering care to Jimmy. Jordan, whose eyes were red, glared at Nora menacingly. Then he said, "Let her do it. Nora, if anything happens to my son, I won't let you off." The bodyguards finally retreated. The long overdue ambulance finally arrived. By the time the paramedics came upstairs, Jimmy had fallen into a deep sleep. His breathing was more even, and he looked much better. Worried for their son, Mr. and Mrs. Hoffman hurriedly followed him into the ambulance. It was only after they got in that they realized Nora had already left. Mrs. Hoffman frowned. "Why did she leave?" The nanny replied, "It seems she only left after seeing that the ambulance had arrived." Mrs. Hoffman bit her lip. Jordan said, "It's fine. She may have left, but her home is still there. If anything happens to Jimmy, I will look for the Andersons." Mrs. Hoffman nodded and gritted her teeth. "There's the kindergarten too. She can run, but she can't hide. Besides, even if she did save Jimmy's life, he was sick in the first place because of her." Jordan nodded. The group finally arrived at the hospital. By the time the doctor came over, Jimmy was already awake and muttering about having a headache. A nurse said, "Doctor, he had already undergone professional first aid by the time we arrived. That person also told me we must perform a lumbar puncture." A lumbar puncture? Something clicked in the doctor's mind. He said, "Don't bother with the brain CT or MRI for now. Perform a lumbar puncture right away." "Yes, sir." After the staff took Jimmy away, the doctor returned to his duties. It was only at daybreak that the doctor finally walked out of the ward, wiping his perspiration. Mr. and Mrs. Hoffman went up to him immediately. "Doctor, how is my son?" The doctor took a deep breath and held their hands excitedly. "Who performed first aid on the child? What exactly did she feed him?" Mrs. Hoffman flew into a rage. "What's wrong? Did something bad happen because of what he was fed? Ah! I'm going to kill her." Jordan panicked too. "Doctor, what exactly is going on? Is there something wrong with that pill? My son was having convulsions because she scared him so badly." The doctor was dumbfounded at their agitation. Convulsions from fright? What nonsense! The child has acute meningitis. If it weren't for the person who saved him in time, he'd probably be dead now. He continued, "I'm just very curious about the medicine she gave him. It's amazing." By the time the child arrived at the hospital, his fever had already subsided. His condition had mostly stabilized. They basically saved his life. At the Andersons. By the time Nora got home after the whole hullabaloo the night before, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. After washing up, she slept until noon the following day, when she was woken by loud knocking at the door downstairs. Bang! 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 The banging was deafening, as if some underworld force was at their doorstep. Nora got out of bed lazily. When she stepped out of her bedroom, she saw Logan going down the stairs quickly. He went to the door and opened it. When he saw Jordan, wearing a thick gold chain around his neck, standing there, he was utterly stunned. "Mr. Hoffman? Why are you here?" Jordan stared at Logan. After a long silence, he finally asked, "Where is Nora Smith?" Logan narrowed his eyes, blocking the way. "Mr. Hoffman, she's just a woman. Come at me if there's anything you want." Jordan thought of what his subordinates had reported the night before. She had beaten up 5 or 6 of them by herself and rushed upstairs afterward. The corners of his lips twitched slightly as he replied, "She's not just any ordinary woman." Logan's misunderstanding deepened. "Which part of her isn't ordinary?" "Mr. Hoffman, just come at me if there's anything you want." However, the men behind Jordan pushed him aside. They entered the villa with great momentum, alarming the elderly Mrs. Anderson upstairs. She came out and asked, "What's going on?" "Ha! Logan." Logan's brows drew together tightly as he watched Jordan walking toward Nora, who was upstairs. The woman even yawned. Obviously, she had just woken up and was completely unaware that danger was descending upon her. He immediately moved forward anxiously to stop them, but... Chapter 197. Jordan, the big and rough boor, bowed to Nora and said, "Miss Smith." Logan blinked. Utterly astounded by the sight, he felt like his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Nora waved casually and asked, "Yeah. Is Jimmy all right now?" Jordan was exceptionally respectful toward her. He replied, "He's fine now. His mother wanted to come over and apologize in person, but Jimmy is still hospitalized for the time being. This is all her fault for not appreciating your kindness. Don't worry, Ms. Smith, I will definitely teach her a good lesson." Nora raised her brows at his words. "Sure enough," Jordan continued, "to be honest, this incident resulted from our negligence as parents. We didn't expect that Jimmy couldn't explain his symptoms clearly due to his young age. Even when we brought him to the hospital, he couldn't express himself clearly to the doctors, which delayed his treatment at first. Sigh. It's fortunate that you came to my place last night. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to save Jimmy this time. By the way, the hospital asked about the pill you gave Jimmy last night. They want to purchase a batch of it." Nora yawned and replied, "You can contact my uncle regarding that. Simon was in charge of all matters at Harmonia Pharmacy." Jordan immediately nodded. "Okay, no problem." Nora nodded. When she saw that Jordan was still staring at her, she asked hesitantly, "Is there anything else?" Jordan immediately shook his head. "No, there's nothing else. You saved Jimmy's life, Miss Smith. If there's anything you need in the future, Jordan, we'll do anything you ask." "Oh, okay." Nora paused for a moment, yawned again, and said, "Okay, I'm going to sleep." She turned to enter the bedroom but instead saw Pete standing there, looking at her expectantly. He let out a silent sigh and said, "Mommy." "Nora." It was only then that she remembered what had happened with Pete. She turned to Jordan and said, "By the way, Mr. Hoffman, can you ask your wife to withdraw her complaint against Pete? I mean Cherry, and let her return to school?" Jordan nodded at once. "No problem. The Hoffmans will cover Cherry's tuition fees in the future. You don't need to do that. Don't stand on ceremony, Ms. Smith. Also, I'll make sure Jimmy protects Cherry at school, so that no one will bully her." Pete. He quietly packed his school bag, slung it over his shoulders, and went downstairs. Then, he asked the Andersons' chauffeur, "Mister, can you take me to the kindergarten?" Nora. Nora returned to her bedroom to sleep after the little fellow left. Downstairs, Logan and Jordan were left flabbergasted. Jordan walked casually over to Logan and patted him on the shoulder. He sighed and said, "Boy, we need to give at least 3 days' notice if we want to postpone a race. We've already missed the deadline today. How about this? I'll try contacting Yancey for you and see if he's willing to come back and help you take part in the race. If he isn't, then you'll need to prepare $50 million. I'll guarantee your safety after the race." In the past, the Andersons could definitely have forked out $50 million. But now, Logan knew that Jordan had already done his best, so he nodded. Before they left, Logan asked, "What's going on between you and Nora, Mr. Hoffman?" Jordan gave him a brief recount of the events and then left. After he left, Logan went upstairs. Before entering his bedroom, he glanced at the room where Nora was. He knew Nora was a doctor, but he didn't expect her to be skilled enough to save Jordan's son. Logan looked at his ankle. He wondered if Nora could heal his injury. But even if she could, there was no time for it at the moment. The race was in 2 days. They really didn't have any time to waste. He would ask her after the race instead. With that in mind, Logan entered his room. He mustn't sit idle. Given his ankle's condition, he would definitely lose if he raced. He sat up, took out his computer, found Yancey's email address, and sent her an email. "Yancey, may I know if you're interested in racing competitions held in the US?" He lay down on the bed after sending the email. Then, he suddenly received a call from Jordan. Jordan's voice was loud as he said, "It just occurred to me that I may have a way to contact Yancey. How about this? I'll contact him for you." Logan replied, "I just sent him an email, but I don't know if he'll come." Jordan said in a friendly tone, "Let me do it instead. I'm a little more familiar with him than you are. After all, we've talked before." He was referring to their past email correspondence. Logan was very grateful. "Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman." "You're welcome." At the hunts. "Wow, Little Yellow is so eye-catching." Cherry circled Logan's sports car and inspected it excitedly. Sean watched the little mister from the side. He couldn't help but feel something had been off with him lately. He asked respectfully, "Shall we put the car in the garage?" "No." Cherry said childishly, "I want to change its color." Sean nodded. He didn't find yellow very attractive either. It was too ostentatious and not low-key. Changing it to black, white, or gray seemed reasonable. He was about to suggest it when Cherry declared, "I want it changed to pink, yeah." "Sean?" He was taken aback for a moment. He stared at Pete in disbelief. "What? Pink, yeah." Cherry skipped back home after saying that. Sean followed her. When they entered the room, Justin had just finished processing some documents and was walking out. When they met, Sean suddenly said, "Mr. Hunt, Pete just told me to change the sports car to pink. What do you?" Justin smiled. "Okay, do as he says." Sean was stunned. "Mr. Hunt, are you serious? Are you sure you want to raise the little mister into a little princess?" While he was dumbfounded, he saw Justin walk over to Cherry. He bent down, picked her up, and asked, "Shall Daddy play Barbies with you today?" "Okay. Daddy's the best, yeah." "Sean." Sean swallowed hard, then looked at Justin and recounted what he'd seen earlier that day. Justin, who was about to leave, paused for a moment. Cherry said, "Did someone bully Uncle Logan?" "Daddy, let's help him. Even though Uncle Logan pretends to be cool all the time, he's actually very nice." Hearing that, Justin looked at Cherry dotingly. "Do you want to watch car racing?" Cherry nodded repeatedly. Justin looked at Sean. "Get 2 tickets ready." "Yes, sir." Elsewhere, when Pete got home, Nora said, "There's an underground car race in 2 days. Do you want to go and watch?" Chapter 198. "Okay, let's." At the sight of Nora staring at him expectantly, Pete gave a resigned reply. To be honest, he wasn't very interested in such things. It was rare to see Mommy interested in something other than sleeping, though, so he decided he would just accompany her. The next day, Pete went to school. Jimmy was still hospitalized, so he didn't come to class. The children were still very concerned about Pete. "Cherry, Jimmy is still unwell. His mother won't let your mother off. You have to be careful. Cherry, will you have to drop out of school when Jimmy returns? I'm so worried about you." Their kindness warmed Pete's heart. He said, "Don't worry. Everything is fine." But right after he spoke, he met Mia's curious eyes and quietly added, "Yeah." The other children didn't believe him, though. "How can that be? I heard that the big tiger in Jimmy's house is really fierce and menacing. It can eat a child with each bite. I've also heard about it. They say Jimmy's mother is a tigress, and his father has 3 legs, 4 arms, and 5 pairs of eyes. He's even fiercer than a tiger." Some of the children even started to cry. "Cherry, I can't bear to part with you." Sob. Pete. Was it really alright for children to be so ignorant? The corners of his lips twitched slightly. He was about to speak when Mia said, "Don't worry, everyone. Cherry will be fine, yeah." "Why?" "Because Cherry's father is Justin Hunt. Jimmy's father is afraid of Cherry's father." Mia replied innocently. "Really?" The other children congratulated him one by one. "Have you found your daddy, Cherry? That's great. Wow, Cherry, so you have a father. I always thought you didn't have one. Did your mommy give birth to you with a rock?" "Ha! Wasn't Cherry given to her mom as a gift with purchase?" When I asked Mom who Cherry's dad was, she said her mom got her free of charge when she bought something. Pete was rendered speechless by how everyone was digressing from the topic. However, there were also some who didn't believe it. They asked, "Cherry, is your father really Justin Hunt?" Pete wanted to deny it, but when he met Mia's innocent eyes, he could only silently reply, "I guess you can say that." As Justin's son, Pete had always taken his safety very seriously, ever since he was a baby. He didn't have any bodyguards with him here, so he mustn't expose his identity casually. The bell finally rang, and the children scattered. Mia sat next to Pete and asked softly, "Don't you like your father, Cherry?" Pete nodded. "Yeah, the tyrant is too fierce." Mia rested her chin on her hands. "Your father won't be so fierce anymore if you become a girl." Pete was taken aback. "Why?" he asked. Mia looked at him. "Because that's what my father says. He says girls should be pampered and brought up lovingly. You must have gone to your father as a boy, right? Pete?" So, was the tyrant so strict and harsh on him because he was a boy? After class, a few older children came into the classroom. The person leading them was very big and well-built, which made him look domineering. A few others followed behind him. The height difference between children even just a year older was noticeable. Pete had always been in rather poor health because he had stopped breathing once as an infant, so he was about the same height as Cherry. These older children were at least half a head taller than Pete. They gathered in front of him. The leader pushed Pete and said, "I heard you bullied Jimmy." "I'm so happy to hear that." Pete frowned. "I didn't." "What didn't you do?" "Do you know who I am?" the burly kid said. "My father is Paul Quinlan. He's enemies with Jimmy's father. It makes me happy that you bullied him. I hereby announce that you can be my little sidekick from now on." "Pete?" He looked at the boy lazily, stepped aside, and said, "I'm not interested." The child immediately grabbed his sleeve. "You're Cherry Smith, right? Don't think I won't beat you up just because you're a girl. Do you know how great an honor it is to be my sidekick? I heard that you don't have a father, right? Do you know who my father is?" "Pete?" The child patted his chest. "My name is Terrence Quinlan, and my father, Paul Quinlan, is even more impressive than Jordan Hoffman. He's amazing. If you follow me, you won't have to be afraid of Jimmy's father anymore. You can ask the people behind me, Who doesn't know that I'm the most awesome around here? Pete. Mia stepped forward. Terrence, you're not allowed to bully Cherry. Terrence looked at her and curled his lip disdainfully. Go away, you invalid. It's only because of your father that I'm not holding it against you. Otherwise, I'd have beaten you up long ago. He shoved Mia aside. You invalid. My father said that out of everyone in the kindergarten, your father is the only one he'll show courtesy to. Everyone else must listen to me. Ha, I heard your father drove away your mother, though. You're now motherless. Your father will marry another woman. When they have a few sons, you'll become an illegitimate daughter, and your father won't care about you anymore. Mia stumbled several steps before steadying herself. Her eyes reddened. That's not true. Don't you spout nonsense. Pete frowned and stepped in front of her. Apologize to her. Terrence sneered. Who do you think you are? You don't even have a father. Why should I apologize to her? Pete was about to speak when Brandon rushed over. Terrence, his father is Justin Hunt. He's someone even your father cannot offend. A look of disbelief appeared on Terrence's face. He guffawed. Are you daydreaming? Justin Hunt. Don't even think a little before you brag. Or do you think you can scare me with a few words? I'm not a 3 or 4-year-old anymore. Mia pouted. His father really is Justin Hunt. Terrence sneered. That's impossible. My father said Justin Hunt only has a son, and he keeps him heavily protected. He has bodyguards everywhere, and no one can see him. Cherry is a girl, how could she possibly be Justin Hunt's child? Mia got anxious. Cherry is a boy today. Terrence burst into loud laughter. By the way, didn't they say Cherry could become a boy? I can't believe you actually believe that. You're so naive. So, Cherry Smith, your father is Justin Hunt, right? Do you dare to call him right now? Why not? Without hesitation, Brandon stood beside Pete. Cherry, call your father now. Chapter 199. Yes, that's right. Mia anxiously took out her cell phone and looked at Pete. Cherry, what's your father's phone number? I'll call him for you. Pete? He didn't want to do it. After all, his parents hadn't officially acknowledged each other yet. It probably wasn't a good idea to just call Justin like that. For a moment, he remained silent. Terrence immediately laughed. Ha, did you see that? He doesn't dare to call him. Cherry, you're just bragging. It's impossible for your father to be Justin Hunt. It's true. Mia's eyes were red. Her father had told her that. There was no way she could be mistaken. Besides, she was the one who said Justin was Cherry's father. It had nothing to do with Cherry at all. Even if there really was a mistake, it wasn't because Cherry was bragging but because she had been mistaken. Yet, she didn't know how to explain herself and panicked. Terrence looked at her. Why are you being so anxious? It's as if you're his wife. How would you know who his father is? I just do. Mia insisted, her voice trembling. Cherry wasn't bragging. Neither did she lie. Terrence scoffed. You little liar. You lie even about your own affairs. Your mother was rejected by your father, yet you insist it isn't true. Little illegitimate daughter, if you're that impressive, then why don't you get Cherry to give us the phone number? Mia was about to cry. Just as she opened her mouth, Pete stepped forward and said coolly, 212 x times x times x times x. The place fell silent for a moment. Terrence looked at Pete. Cherry, what do you mean by that? Pete didn't look at him but at Mia instead. That's my daddy's phone number. You weren't lying. Mia finally came back to her senses and hurriedly dialed the number. Toot, toot, toot. Mia and Brandon both held their breaths with the dial tone. Even Terrence remained silent. For a while, the atmosphere became tense and quiet. However, after 3 rings, the recipient didn't answer and instead rejected the call. Beep, beep, beep. Mia was dumbfounded. Brandon was stunned as well. Terrence, however, burst into laughter. You saw that, right? You were just giving us a random number. The recipient didn't even pick up. Cherry, you're a wild child without a father. You don't have a father at all. Mia panicked and dialed the number again. However, after a few rings, a message played, the number you have dialed does not exist. Mia's phone number had been blocked. Mia. Brandon was also dumbfounded. Cherry, what's the matter with your father? Pete replied calmly, my father doesn't answer calls from strangers. Brandon immediately believed him. I see, so that's how it is. Mia nodded. Oh, that's true. My father doesn't answer calls from strangers either. People of Justin's and Joel's class all had private phone numbers. It was standard protocol to reject calls from strangers. In addition, for people like them, apart from their family or others of the same class, almost no one could get their private numbers. While they were talking, Terrence sneered. Of course, my father doesn't answer calls from strangers either. But why don't you use your own phone to call him? Cherry, you deliberately said that number knowing everyone has that habit, right? The number you gave isn't Justin Hunt's at all. 212 x times x times x times x, said Pete again calmly. Have you remembered it? Terrence curled his lip disdainfully. What? Pete said coolly, your father should have my father's private number. You can go home and confirm it with your dad after you remember it. You'll see then. Terrence? He was taken aback, but then he sneered. I get it now, you're stalling for time. But even if you gloss it over today, you'll still be a wild child without a father tomorrow. Humph. I'll go home and cross-check the number right now. Terrence turned and led the group away. To be honest, he was a little scared that Justin Hunt really was Cherry's father. If that happened, things could become troublesome. His father had warned him several times not to mess with the Smith children in school. Additionally, he wasn't to mess with children from the Hunts either. It was just that the Hunts didn't send their children to this school, so he wasn't very worried. After Terrence left, Mia and Brandon looked at Pete. Mia asked timidly, Cherry, did I cause trouble for you? If she hadn't revealed Cherry's father's information in school, Terrence and the others wouldn't have known. It was indeed troublesome. Pete, who looked slightly troubled, glanced at Mia. Her tiny, pointed, oval-shaped face and big eyes were filled with tentativeness. This made Pete calmly reply, it's not a big deal. After he said that, Tanya called from a distance, Cherry, come for your dance class. Stop dilly-dallying, you're about to be late. Pete. He massaged his temples and walked toward the dance studio, feeling a headache coming on. When exactly was Cherry switching back with him? As he walked, he glanced back. Sure enough, Mia's face was full of envy. Tanya was also looking at Mia when Pete approached. The little girl looked timidly at him, unable to hide the longing in her eyes. An indescribable bitterness welled up in her heart. Come to think of it, this was strange. She was obviously Hillary's daughter, yet she found him very lovable. Was she really that much of a cheap woman? After all, she was technically Hillary's half-sister. Mia should actually be calling her Aunt Tanya. At the thought, Tanya forced herself to look away. She took Pete to the dance studio resolutely, leaving behind Mia with a longing look, and disappointment and sadness in her eyes. Next to her, Brandon said casually, Cherry is really almighty. Not only is she great at solving mathematical Olympiad problems, but she can even dance. Mia, do you want to learn to dance? Mia lowered her head and stared at her toes. Yes, I do. Brandon said casually, then let's ask Ms. Turner to teach you. She's the best dance teacher ever. Just tell your father, he'll definitely agree. Mia sighed, turned around unhappily, and returned to the classroom. After school, Terrence dashed out of the school and got into the car. As expected, his father, Paul Quinlan, had come to pick him up. The 6-year-old child was stout and muscular as a bull. Paul, on the other hand, looked refined, though his eyes appeared particularly sinister. Terence whined, "Daddy, there's a brat in kindergarten who's pretending to be Justin Hunt's daughter." Paul was taken aback. "What?" Terence suddenly remembered something and recited a series of numbers. "Quick, Daddy, can you check if this is Justin Hunt's phone number?" Chapter 200. Paul frowned as he listened to Terence. He picked up his cell phone, checked Justin's private number, and took a look. Then he said, "No, it isn't." Quite the coincidence, though. Only 2 numbers off. Terence immediately curled his lip. "I knew she was a fake." Paul scoffed. "Someone is actually pretending to be Justin Hunt's daughter? Now that's hilarious. After all, he has never had a daughter. The fact that Justin had a son was already a closely guarded secret. However, that secrecy applied only to outsiders. Families like the Quinlans had to pay close attention to the affairs of the wealthy. Paul had tried various means over the years to gather information. In the end, he only learned that Justin had a 5-year-old son. Apart from that, he had discovered nothing. Terence became even angrier. He clenched his fists. "Humph! How dare she lie to me? I'm going to punch her teeth out on Monday." It was Friday, so the next day was the weekend. There were no classes, meaning he would have to wait until Monday to take his revenge. Terence then looked at Paul. "Daddy, can I go and watch the car race tomorrow?" Paul smiled. "Sure, no problem. We're also part of the racetracks Jordan Hoffman established, aren't we?" For a moment, Paul fell silent. His eyes turned a little more sinister and ruthless. The Hoffmans and the Quinlans were of equal standing in the underworld. However, everyone knew Paul was fiercer and more ruthless than Jordan. Even though he looked polite and refined, deep down he was much more vicious and violent. Jordan had a scary face but a lot of self-restraint. Paul, on the other hand, did not. The two families had been competing with each other for years. Therefore, Paul had agreed when Winston wanted to make things difficult for Logan. After all, Jordan had made a lot of money through Logan, the racing king. Winston had used Logan's name to threaten people in New York, so they wouldn't dare buy his sports cars. However, someone had refused to show courtesy in the end. When Paul asked who they were, he learned it was the Hunts. Paul let out an icy laugh. What a small world. He wasn't going to mess with the Hunts if he could avoid it. Should they back up Jordan, Paul would have had a much harder time. With that in mind, Paul said coldly, "Stay away from the Hunts' children in the future. No matter the occasion, don't mess with them." Terence had always relied on his father to back him up, so he knew well who he could mess with and who he couldn't. He hastily nodded. Elsewhere, Pete went home with Tanya as usual. After they got into the car and Tanya drove away in the Jeep, Joel finally reluctantly turned away his gaze. Brandon and Mia came out together and got into Joel's car. As soon as he got in, Brandon asked, "Uncle Joel, is Cherry's father Justin Hunt?" Joel nodded. "Yeah." He then looked at Mia, who hung her head, clearly not in high spirits. Joel ruffled her hair gently and dotingly. "What's wrong, Mia?" Mia glanced at him and hung her head again. "It's nothing, Daddy." When Joel tried to ask further, Brandon piped up. "I know what's going on, Uncle Joel. Mia wants to dance, but Miss Turner won't take her in." Mia hurriedly raised her head and waved her hands. "And no, that's not true. I don't actually like dancing that much." She didn't want her father to force Miss Turner to teach her, as it would be unfair to the teacher. Besides, her mother didn't like her dancing either. Joel's eyes flickered. He ruffled Mia's hair again. "Okay, I see." Brandon looked restless and couldn't sit still for the ride home. Joel noticed but didn't interfere. When they got home, Joel saw Brandon making an excuse to drag Mia off to play. He gave the nanny a look. She nodded and followed them. Less than half an hour later, the nanny returned. "Brandon is trying to get Mia to go and watch a car race tomorrow afternoon." "Joel!" The nanny lowered her head. Do you want to stop them? Joel thought of Mia's timid expression, and of Brandon's daring act of cutting off his little Willie to become a girl for Cherry. He held his forehead. He wanted to encourage his daughter to be more cheerful but was worried about Brandon's presence. Finally, he said, let them go, but have a few people protect them secretly. Yes, sir. The next day at the Andersons, Nora slept until race time. When she got up, she lazily put on a black baseball cap, black shirt, and trousers. Without bothering to dress up, she took Pete with her. As soon as she exited the bedroom, she saw Logan walking out of his room. He looked particularly awful, limping slightly as his foot injury hadn't healed yet. Nora frowned. Are you still going to take part in the race today? Logan grunted in annoyance. Yancy hadn't replied to his email. Jordan had called to say he couldn't reach him either. Logan had no choice but to go ahead. Losing would cost him $50 million. The profits from the carefree pills likely wouldn't cover that even if the Andersons received them now. Logan gritted his teeth and walked out, Nora following behind. A friend of Logan's came to pick him up. He got into the car and left. Nora drove off in the Jeep after Pete sat in the back seat, fastened his seatbelt and stayed obedient. The race was held in an abandoned factory in the suburbs. A professional racetrack had been built inside. The area was large enough that from the outside, no one could tell a track existed. Jordan had already bought the entire plot of land. Security was tight, and everyone had to undergo strict inspections and show tickets to enter. When Logan got out of the car and was about to enter, his friend tugged at his sleeve. Logan, isn't that your cousin and niece? Logan? He turned and saw Nora parking her car behind theirs. She got out without paying any attention to the person in the back seat. Pete unfastened his seatbelt, pushed open the door, hopped down from the thick chassis, and closed the car door herself. Logan frowned. His friend asked, "Did you get them tickets?" Logan. His friend continued, "It'll be very difficult for them to get in without tickets. Mr. Hoffman has strengthened security for today's race." Logan grew even more irritable. They should have informed him in advance if they wanted to watch. Instead, they had just followed him. How troublesome. Just as he was about to walk over, he saw